Longbox Review, Episode 14. Hi, this is Eric from Longbox Review at longboxreview.wordpress.com.
And this is Travis from Oddfellow's Thoughts at oddfellowsthoughts.wordpress.com.
All right, so Travis and I are back yet again to talk about the new DC 52, the final week. Aren't we glad this is over, Travis?
Yeah. I'm ready for week 2.
Week? You mean month 2?
Oh, no, yeah, you're right, month 2.
What, you want to go back and read the week 2 issues?
No. Well, what was in week 2? I can't even remember.
Yeah, I know. I know. I have the entire stack of all the weeks sitting on my desk next to me, just in case I want to thumb back through them. Anyway, so we're gonna do the final week, the last week of September from DC Comics, the New 52. Travis didn't read a bunch of these, so unfortunately you'll have to put up with me talking about a bunch of these comics. But I'm sure Travis will jump in there when he has some thoughts to say about these comics he did not read.
Sure. I guarantee it.
It's Travis, in some ways it's more interesting to me to discuss why we didn't read a particular issue than it is to discuss the issues that we did read.
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. But before we get to that, I wanted to make a couple announcements, or talk about a couple different things. Let's see. First of all, so like last week, I mentioned there were a few people that I wanted to single out because they were nice enough to spotlight the podcast and the Longbox Review blog. And so I wanted to continue that just a little bit this week as well. First of all, I wanted to thank the person from Germany, whoever you are, for downloading an episode of the podcast. This has been in the last month. I really appreciate our international audience. It's not just Germany. There's a bunch of other folks from other countries that have been listening to the podcast, and I just wanted to say thank you very much for that. I would love to hear from these folks to see, or to know why they decided to check out the podcast. So please email or leave a message on the blog. That'd be great. And then also there's another WordPress site who has been. I'm not sure if they're actually listening to the podcast, but they've been reading the blog and they've been how, Travis, you can click a like button on the WordPress sites.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they've been doing that for some of the blog posts I've been doing. So I wanted to thank Talking Questions for that, and Talking Questions also does their own podcast. It's an interesting little podcast. They get together and talk about just a bunch of different stuff. It's not a comic book podcast, but they definitely have spirited conversations about various things. So there's that. And I also wanted to mention the Batman Year One DVD from DC Entertainment came out last Tuesday, which was October 18th, I believe. So I bought it, and I can't wait to watch it. It looks really good. Just the preview art and the trailers I've seen look really good. It's based on that Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli Year One miniseries that they did way back when. Gosh, Travis, do you remember how long ago that was?
No.
That was 80.
Yeah. 20 years ago.
80-something. It came out after The Dark Knight. I remember that. So that was 86 that came out. So it must have been 87 or 88 that Year One came out.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's always been one of my favorite stories. Just drawn superbly by Mazzucchelli, though. That was just, it looked really cool and fit the tone of the story by Frank Miller. So I can't wait to watch that. And finally, Travis, when I went to the comic book shop here in the last couple of days, I picked up Huntress #1, since you and a bunch of other people have been singing its praises. And I have to say, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I was surprised. I was not going to pick that up because it was Paul Levitt's doing the writing, and I just haven't been liking his work on the Legion of Superheroes. So I'm like, well, I'll just wait for the trade and all that stuff. But I decided, oh, what the heck? Since I was there, and the shop had plenty of issues on the shelf, so apparently they overbought, I'll say, on that particular issue. But anyway, I picked it up and I just read it this morning, and I have to say I'm impressed. I will be getting the rest of it.
Yeah.
And I'd like to also say, man, it's so nice to see Huntress in a full bodysuit
Yep.
again,
Yep. Yep.
as
I'm not
opposed to
sure.
that belly. I was going to say belly shirt, but it's not really a
Yeah,
shirt.
I'm not sure why the last run of Birds of Prey they put her back in that thing again. I think Gail likes the window. I'm not sure
Oh,
why.
really?
Yeah, I don't know. I
Do
mean,
you, do you think the writer has some sort of say in that? In how the people that she's
sure they
writing,
do.
she or he are
Why
writing
why
about?
wouldn't why wouldn't they?
I suppose that's true. I mean, if there's a particular character or a plot point that revolves around the costume,
Uh,
I suppose they could have
yeah.
some say in that. But
I like that version of the costume. It's a nice mix between well, it's
wait, which version are you talking
the
about?
one that's out right now. The one that's out right now.
Okay.
I like that version. It's got some of the look that Cully Hammer put on her in the that little backup story that was in the back of Detective Comics where she was teamed up with the Question,
Oh, okay.
where she's wearing more armor. I mean, she's got armored forearms and knees and legs and shoulder pads and whatnot.
Hmm.
So I thought it was a nice mix between that looked much plainer and utilitarian. It's kind of a mix between that and the fancy or high fantasy windowed thing, which I didn't mind that either. But then I'm a Huntress Helena fan through
Oh,
and through.
sure. Yeah, and I've been a fan of the character ever since they brought her out in the what was it the 70s,
Yeah,
as the Earth 2
right.
uh, Huntress.
Well, that's Paul's creation.
Yeah, exactly. So him coming back to it again, like with Legion, I'm like, oh man,
Right.
I don't know if I
Well,
want to touch
kind of
that.
what I kind of wondered about that too. I mean, I was going to get it regardless because it's a Huntress thing, and I'm a big Huntress fan. And I wondered about that, but I saw somewhere I read an interview where he was talking about it, how he was going to, he knew, he says there's a difference between his original Huntress that's in Earth 2 and the Huntress that's roaming around in Earth 1. Yeah, and he recognized that, and he did feel that they were both kick butt, but that this Helena for Earth 1 was more so, and he was going to embrace that. And so I thought, well, the guy has writing chops, and he's written some great stuff in the past, so I'm hoping he wouldn't make a mess of this. And I think he doing a great job, and I think it's an example of why. I mean, he took this and is doing something different for him with it, where I think with the Legion, he's not doing anything different with it, and that's why it's coming across flat.
Hmm.
I think, because I think him as a writer isn't with the Legion isn't addressing anything new, or even having a new thought about it. I don't think.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, you're probably right there. But anyway, I really enjoyed it, and especially the Marcus Toe art
yeah.
just
Oh yeah.
just looks beautiful.
Oh yeah.
That's yeah, it's a great fit with the character, and I know that the story itself, it's kind of that familiar trope of
Sure.
of of women trafficking
Mhm.
through Italy, but I mean it's I don't mean to to downplay that kind of that serious issue, but it's a story we've seen before in
Sure.
superhero comics, but I enjoyed it very much, and like I said, I'll be getting the rest of the series.
Yeah. She looked damn good doing it. I hope they hook that guy up with some more. I hope they hook that artist up with some more work.
Oh yeah. Yeah, in fact, when I was reading it this morning, I was going to try and look this up before we got started, but I was trying to think of some other stuff that the artist has done.
Yeah, no idea.
because it looks his art looks familiar. Like I've just recently seen him do some stuff, and maybe I don't know. Do you remember if we've talked about his art in regards to the 52 issues
Uh,
that we've been reviewing?
I don't think so.
Okay, but anyway, so there's that, and you, Travis, you just released a day or two ago a new Not on the Pole video blog. Is that
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So people should go check that out. That's at youtube.com/user/oddfellowsthoughts.
Yep.
Or you can
You
go
can listen
to.
to me talk about Catwoman and tell me I'm wrong.
Now that was Catwoman 2 and Supergirl 2, is that right?
Yes.
That you did? Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'm seeing it now. I just looked it up. Okay. So yeah, so people should go check that out. Um, all right, Travis, shall we get started on week 4 of the new 52?
Sounds good.
All right, so just to remind everyone, this is a spoiler discussion. I would hope that anybody who has been reading the DC Comics has already read these, and it's not an issue, but just in case, I just wanted to point that out. So here we go. Travis, why don't you start us off?
Okay. First issue of the week is All-Star Western #1. Written by Jimmy Palmiotti and Justin Gray, with art by
Moratat?
Moratat, is that what we're saying? Okay. With colors by Gerbel
Batista.
Batista. Okay.
There we go.
I'm horrible with names. So.
All right.
Great comic.
Yeah?
Yeah, I really liked it. I like Jonah Hex. I mean, I haven't been a true blue Jonah Hex follower. I haven't picked up all the issues of that 70 issue run, but I picked up issues here and there when it's either had artists or whatever that I've been interested in seeing how they handled Jonah. I like this story. There's parts of it that yeah, probably have been done before. It has that kind of Jack the Ripper feel to it to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the fact that it's told through the eyes of a budding psychologist. And so for those people who don't know Jonah Hex, we get a pretty good introduction to Jonah Hex just by his analyzing what Jonah Hex is and whatnot. Pretty quickly tells you, what kind of a person Jonah Hex is to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the art. It's got a great style to it.
Oh yeah.
It's very stylized, and I enjoy that. I enjoy the colors that's added to it. The fact that it's it uses a very small palette.
Mm-hmm.
It's all browns and grays and muddy. I mean, I know Gotham is not a frontier town, but obviously it's still
Rough and tumble.
It's that era that has that still going through it. They're trying to be a civilized cosmopolitan, but they, obviously are still having to deal with, with the wild that's out there too.
Mm-hmm.
And so that very limited palette gives us that still dirty, muddy, feeling to it. And when there's the occasional bright color in it, usually has an important meaning to it. If it's not just lights, I don't know. I'm enjoying the heck out of it. I'm looking forward to seeing where all it goes. The ending of it was great, I thought. Yeah.
So Travis, was this something you picked up off the shelf, or did you pre-order this one?
I pre-ordered this.
And were you pre-ordered through issue 3?
Yes.
Okay. See, so I ordered #1. I pre-ordered that one and got it because it's the $3.99 price point. So, but I got it not because I was interested in. I like Jonah Hex as well. I've always liked that character. In fact, one of the very first. I was looking back through. Sometimes I post my comics history reminiscence.
Uh-huh.
And so going through that, one of the things that I think the last post I did I talked about remember those digests that DC used to put out?
Yeah.
So they had one like the year's best stories from 1979, I think it was, and I think in that one there was a Jonah Hex story, and so that was my first introduction to the character.
Mm.
And ever since then, I've just enjoyed that character. I don't particularly read the comics, but every once in a while I'll read a story somehow. Either he shows up in something like I think he was in a Brave and the Bold issue a few years back. Um, so anyway, I like the character. Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, they have a proven track record of writing really good stories, not just
Yes.
Jonah Hex stories, but just in general.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I wanted to just give it a shot just to see. I didn't think that I would be interested in it to go beyond issue one. It was just more or less, let's just get the issue one and see how it is. And wow, this is one of the big surprises of all the month, the new 52 month,
Mm.
because I read that. I'm like, okay, first of all, I got to go make sure I get issue number 2, and I'm going to get at least the first arc of this comic because
Yeah.
good story, like you said. Like I had some misgivings about it from the beginning, but I'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, really, what sold this for me was the art.
Yeah.
Everything you said about the art, I totally agree with. There's that muted tone. It just fit the mood and the tone of the story. Um, I've never heard of Moritot before, but I understand that he is he does more European stuff, and
Uh-huh.
that's you kind of get that style here. Um, but just yeah, and the color artist, whose name I've forgotten already, but yeah, they did a really good job of doing what they did with it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was good stuff. You mentioned we see Jonah Hex and the story told mostly through Dr. Amadeus Arkham, and where I didn't particularly care for, remember how we talked about Wonder Woman, how I wanted to see more of the story told from Wonder Woman's perspective,
Uh-huh.
and I didn't particularly care for what that choice that they did.
Hmm.
Here, it works perfectly
Right.
to have Arkham be the eyes of the reader, and everything that we see is pretty much through his eyes. So, and then we get his voiceover, narration
Right.
to help
Right.
explain things along the way, and that kind of the budding psychology that's going on about this time period. Yeah, it just all kind of gelled very well together and made a really good comic.
Hmm. Hmm.
I did have, when I first read about this particular comic though, and they were going to set it in Gotham City in the 1880s. My first thought of that was like, really, does everything have to happen in Gotham?
Gotham. Right. Right.
But I have to say, I didn't mind so much. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's still a nagging thing in the back of my brain, but it's like, it could have been any town that they chose. They just chose uh, chose Gotham.
I don't know. I can't, in a way for me though, I kind of like, I mean, I always like that too. And I'm always grumbling about the fact, how many characters do we have to land in Gotham? But
Right.
in this case, it has to do with the history of Gotham too.
Hmm.
And that interests me. I like this new approach that a few of the writers are taking with, with the life of Gotham itself being just as important as the characters that are in it, and adding just all these extra layers to Gotham. And this just potentially adds another layer to Gotham.
Hmm.
Gotham didn't just suddenly become this, cesspool that created Batman. It's been a cesspool for a long time,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think that's interesting. All this different stuff that's being added into it.
Yeah.
So in this case, because this is a historical piece, I didn't mind the fact that it was set in Gotham.
Hmm. Hmm. And like I said, we because of that we get Arkham as the character in there.
Right.
Of course, Arkham has a huge impact on Gotham City in the present.
Yeah.
And there have been all these other stories told in the past about, the history of not. I think it started with Arkham Asylum. So we started getting the history of Arkham Asylum. Remember the graphic novel that I think Grant Morrison did?
Yep. Hmm.
Wow, I am blanking on it now. Do you remember what the title of
I
that
can't remember
was?
what the title's called now.
Well, take away our geek cards now.
And it's funny because I just read it less than a month ago.
Really?
happened to be digging through stuff and pulled it out. I'm like, oh yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I had to
wow.
show it to my son. So
Anyway, so
yeah,
everybody who listens to this are screaming at us like, "You idiots! It's this."
yeah.
Anyway, so we got a little bit of the backstory of Arkham Asylum, and over the years we've gotten other stories.
Hmm.
Grant Morrison did, when he was doing his run on Batman, the RIP story, and then later we get him doing the when he was lost in time, the Return of Bruce Wayne series, and
Yeah,
get all that historical narratives about the history of Gotham and Bruce's role in that. I don't know if that even counts now with the new 52, but so you get all that, and then we added on, like you say, like, perfectly. Get all these layers of Gotham City, and yeah, I'm actually coming around to that idea. I kind of like it. I wish they would do that now with some other major cities in the DC universe. I'd love to see. And Gates of Gotham, the more recent series
right,
that
right.
Snyder did. So you
Hmm.
get all that. But yeah, I'd really like to see some sort of a story told, um, with Metropolis in the 1800s, 1900s, and how Gotham and Metropolis relate to each other. I'd find that kind of interesting, but maybe that's just me. But yeah, good. It was a good issue. Um, a good introduction to the character of Jonah Hex. New reader friendly, yes.
Well, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so because I mean, you get an introduction to Arkham. I mean, we find out pretty quickly what Arkham is and what he does and what his personality is kind of like, and he introduces us to Hex really.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah. A great way of getting that comic out there. A
yeah,
Western comic with a well-established character, as at least from long-time readers'
right,
perspectives. But anybody new coming in that's interested in a Western
yeah,
um, could easily enjoy this, I think.
yeah.
So there we
And
go.
anyone, and it ends well. It ends with the oh crap, basically.
Hmm. Yep.
At the end. You
Yeah.
know,
Like a lot
that,
of these first issues,
yeah,
the endings are pretty well, I think.
yeah, yeah. So the price point. That
Oh yeah.
28 pages of actual content, not
Hmm.
counting the the silly fluffy where they talk to the writers and stuff that's at the end of every single one of these books. Um, Worth it?
Hmm. Yeah. 28 pages. So are we saying that 2.99 for 20 pages, that's our baseline, right?
Uh,
So if you get 8 more pages for a
hmm.
dollar more,
Hmm.
yeah, probably.
Yeah,
I
and
am
and
I'm
the,
still
the
concerned
book's
about
gonna
it.
the book's gonna maintain that price point, is my understanding. But going forward in the future, it'll actually be 20 pages basically of the main title, and then there's going to be a backstory of other characters of the era.
Yes.
That's my understanding of it.
Right.
So,
Right. That's what I'd heard as well, although I don't
right.
know.
Do you know are those going to be written by Jimmy and Justin?
The second story?
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at the DC Comics website, issue number 5, that the preview that they have, the solicitation, and
Uh,
it just says written by Graham Palmiotti, um, but it doesn't say anything about
a
the
second story.
second story.
Well, maybe it's
Although, oh wait, so now I don't know. It's unclear based on the solicitation. So I looked at number 4, and it says at the end, also introducing the Barbary Ghost. So maybe that's the beginning of the second story, but it does not say if it's written by someone else or if the art's by
okay.
someone else.
Yeah, I was just curious. I was just curious. It was going to be like they were doing before, there for a while, and some of the titles they had that backup story,
Oh
and
wait, yeah,
lots of times it was written by completely different people, kind
I'm
of thing.
I'm sorry, I'm way wrong. Issue number 2 actually introduces the second story with El Diablo.
Oh, okay.
So apparently, issue 2 and 3 has a story with El Diablo, and then 4 and 5 has the Barbary Ghost
Oh, okay.
story. So,
Yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to that too, just to seeing what they do with some of the other characters of the era.
hmm although
Because I'm okay with westerns. I'm okay with westerns.
Yeah,
I mean, I liked westerns as a kid, and you know, um, if it's a good story, I'm there. I'll read it. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Well, yeah, you get a good enough writer and artist team on there. Yeah, it doesn't matter what kind of genre it is if they
right,
tell a good story.
right. See, I hope this will be successful. Um, I kind of wonder if those two things are working against it, though. It being a western, and if you're not open to just reading a good story, that might. Well, I'm just saying, from a new launch perspective, um, and then the price of it, you know, that those two things may work against it.
I have the same reservations. $3.99 for any comic right now, I think, is just too much. And yeah, it being a non-superhero title from DC,
I mean,
despite the
but
fact
if
that you get extra stuff,
right.
I think it's a hard sell. So I'm really wondering why they're doing it that way.
Well, I mean, if this brings along all the Jonah Hex fans, everybody who collected it before, granted, well, I don't know that it was a huge selling title, but it must have sold reasonably well, either in trades or something, because it wouldn't have made 70 issues and still going before the relaunch, right? So it had, for whatever reason, somebody likes it enough that it was still around.
Hmm.
And if it can pick up new readers, if it can get enough people on board because of the whole excitement over the whole relaunch thing, that maybe it'll be able to stick around then, because you've got whatever the old readers were. 'Cause there's nothing in this to chase the old readers away, I wouldn't think.
Hmm.
Um, and then add on top of that that wave of new or coming back readers to it. I think it'll do well. I hope, because like I said, I enjoyed the heck out of it.
Yeah, I I guess it really depends on keeping the creative team that seems to work really well long term, just not, beyond the first story arc,
Right.
and how well I guess the second feature does,
Yeah.
to
Well,
justify spending that extra dollar a month.
yeah. I can't imagine that. Well, anything I've ever heard from the two writers, anyway, they'll write, you know, they'll be writing Jonah Hex stories after the book's done. They'll still be writing them. It sounds like, and they've got a lot of stories to write,
Yeah.
and depending on who their artist is, depends on what they want to write. It sounds like from listening to two of them talk, and I just think it'd be insane for DC to kick them off of it. That's just me.
Yeah. Hmm. So, good book. People should check it
Yes,
out.
yes.
All right. Let's move on to our second book of week 4. Travis did not read this one. I don't know why. Um,
It's Aquaman. That's
Aquaman number
why.
1.
That's why it's
Oh my gosh.
Aquaman.
Okay, so first of all, Aquaman number 1, written by Jeff Johns, yay! With penciler Yvonne Hayes, yay! Um, Joe Prado is the inker, and again, I don't know if this is a fellow countryman of Yvonne's, but Rod, it's either Race or Hayes, is a colorist. Um, and Aquaman, as it's shown here on page 4, I think it is. This is new. You know how Batman and Superman, they always say created by Jerry's, what's his name from Batman?
Okay.
Thank you, Bob Kane. Boy. And Superman by Siegel and Schuster. Aquaman now has a created by thing by Paul Norris. So I thought that was kind of cool that they're doing that. I mean, the big three, they've done that forever. Well, not forever, but they've done that for many, many years. But now some of these other, what I'll call second tier characters, are getting the original creators are getting their due. So
Mm.
at least, on the page, whether or not they've gotten any kind of compensation, I don't know. But anyway,
They get credit.
yes, they got a credit here, so that I thought that was kind of cool that they did that. Okay, so Aquaman number 1. Unfortunately, Travis, you're missing out. This was just a lovely, lovely book. In that, I like Jeff Johns' writing in general. Sometimes he can kind of let me down. Flashpoint, The Flash. Before that, I was not impressed. Flash Rebirth. Maybe it's just The Flash. Maybe I just have a problem with Johns writing Flash. But anyway, um, this was, I thought, a very entertaining book. It has some funny stuff in it. They make fun of Aquaman. Everybody's making fun of Aquaman in this. And then, he quickly undercuts that by showing, you know what, I'm not a joke. Um, I can do this stuff, and I do it very well. Um, and there's a lot of good introduction to the character, his history, without, going full on, oh, here's Aquaman's history. You just get a few pages of backstory that explains pretty much, why he is the way he is, why he's going to make the decision he does later in the issue. Um, I mean, he even goes into a restaurant near, it's a seaside restaurant, and he orders fish and chips, and everybody just kind of looks at him like, "Oh my God, you cannibal, you!" And he's like, "What?" Fish eat fish. That's just part of it. I eat fish, but really he comes there because and it's just this one quick panel where he's just remembering him and his human father eating there. And so he just goes there just to experience that memory again. There's
So
also a
that,
night,
so
huh?
that so that's why he's out of the water.
What?
So that's why he's out of the water.
Well, no, he's doing some other thing. He's doing some super heroics too. Well, and there is another, yeah, why he's why he's basically at this town doing stuff. He's come to this decision, and I question this direction, but he is questioning, or not questioning. He's sorry, my thoughts are a little scattered here. He has decided to basically abdicate the throne because the Atlanteans again. Well, I say again, but this is the new version of the DC universe, so who knows if this is a new thing from Aquaman's perspective or what. But basically, they're basically not treating him very well, as because even though he's the king or was the king, he's still not full Atlantean. He's half Atlantean, and so they kind of, apparently the Atlanteans are kind of looking down on him about that. So in other words, he's embracing his human history as opposed to his Atlantean history, along with his wife Mira. So he's telling Mira that he's going to, be part of the topside world more, which of course sets up
Ah, okay.
future stories for him to be doing stuff, up on land.
Right.
However, there's this new um, villain group called the Trench. They're basically these very hungry um, ocean-dwelling creatures who have decided to come up and basically eat anything in their way, including people. So we'll have to deal with that. Um, but again, like I really enjoyed this. I like the little touches, some of which I've described here. There's and the art is just wonderful. Ivan Hayes' art is just fantastic. I wish this guy would do more stuff. Not just Aquaman, but other things too. Because it's very accessible. It's very superhero-y, without being cartoony. Um, and like I said, the inker and color artist did a really good job complementing the art of this book. So I thought it was a great introduction to Aquaman. It's a good first issue. Even if you don't like the Aquaman character, I really highly recommend you give it a shot, because it's wonderfully written so far, and the art is just great. And if you're like me, you read Brightest Day, um, and enjoyed the Aquaman stuff in that, and which for me that was my favorite part of Brightest Day, was the Aquaman part. This kind of continues that on a little bit, in the sense that you get there's the stuff that happened in Brightest Day we know happened to some degree. At least that's what we've been told by the DC editorial. Um, and so you kind of get the not a direct callback in this issue, I don't think, from what I remember reading, but you kind of get a sense of why Aquaman is coming to the decision he comes to, is because of the stuff that happened in Brightest Day, or at least that kind of pushed him in that way, in that direction. So it was just a nice continuation of stuff that happened in Brightest Day to get to this first issue of Aquaman, and yeah, it's good stuff. So Travis, why don't you read Aquaman?
I'm not a real big fan of the character, and to tell you the truth, when I heard they were putting out another Aquaman comic, and I actually own some old Aquaman comics, I was like, what are they gonna do with him? Because if he's in the water, you know, unless there's a lot more under the water than what DC has led us to believe up until this point, what are they going to spend his time doing? It just, to me, it just sounds like it was going to be very boring. Now, of course, if he basically is going to give up the throne and leave Atlantia behind and spend all of his time topside, then he might actually be interesting. I've heard that first issue is pretty good. A lot of people have talked about how great it is and whatnot. And I may go back and pick it up just because, if nothing else, I'll get a chuckle out of all the people picking on what a dork he is because, well, he's Aquaman. And so, therefore, come on, even the Big Bang Theory, they draw straws to who gets stuck wearing which costume.
Yeah, yeah.
Aquaman.
Oh, and have you ever seen Craig Ferguson on the Late Late Show?
Yes.
He does his little Aquaman thing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't got anything against the character, actually. He just it doesn't interest me as a lot. He's one of those characters that I find him fine if he's, in the Justice League in the past and whatnot. I mean, I find him interesting as far as that goes. But I didn't want to pick up all 52 of the new 52 and I had to draw the line somewhere. Flash, Green Lantern, and Aquaman. Those are characters that are just secondary characters.
Interesting.
That I think that are interesting in the Justice League and whatnot. I like them there, but I don't have enough interest in them or their powers or what they do to want to read about them individually as people.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe some point I'll go back, like I said, pick up this #1, or maybe I will, when they crank this thing out in a trade, if people are still, by issue 4, people are still talking about how great it is, maybe I'll pick it up then.
Yeah.
But there we are.
I
Cut off his hand and give him a beard,
No.
and I'd be all over it.
I see. I'm so glad they've gone back from that. I mean, okay. Aside from his physical appearance back then, I really enjoyed his portrayal as a monarch.
Right.
From that JLA run.
Yeah.
And so this is the one thing I do question on with John's approach to the character of him basically turning his back on his.
So he gave that up solely because they don't like him. Really?
Well, again, that's kind
How
of
many monarchs are really loved all the time?
Yeah,
I'm just curious. Anywhere, ever. I don't know. Okay.
You're right.
To me, I question that.
It's a weak premise that he's Aquaman is doing what he's doing. So yeah, I do question John's reason for doing that. And I still think that there could be good stories told with him being monarch of Atlantis, but still doing stuff with the Justice League and in his own book.
Right.
Because he's got 2 worlds in which to draw from as far as stories go.
Yeah. Well, I think the reason he's putting him topside is because there aren't as many stories to tell under the water.
See,
something attacking a land. That's going to be it, right?
Well, how is that any
again?
different?
What else is there to tell? Nothing, because there's nothing else down there.
How is that any different from any other Batman or Superman story?
Probably nothing different, other than it's under the water. And it's all reactionary. Batman isn't reactionary. Batman's out on the streets every night looking for what's out there. If it was a matter of him sitting around being king and waiting for something to happen to his place, that's all reactionary.
Well, okay, but I think that's a problem with the storyteller, not the character.
Okay.
They could easily change that to make.
Sure. So they had him give up the throne because he was getting picked on, and he's going topside.
Poor Aquaman.
Get
picked on by everybody. Regardless, it was a great issue. I will just leave it at that.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, next on the list, Batman: The Dark Knight. And I forget, Travis, did you read this one?
This is the only Bat title that I do not pick up.
Ah, all right. Well, let me do the introduction. We'll find out why you did not pick this up. Batman: The Dark Knight, #1 by Paul Jenkins, writer and co-plotter with David Finch, co-plotter and penciler. Richard Friend is the inker. Colors by Alex Sinclair. Travis, why did you not pick up Batman: The Dark Knight?
Well, I didn't pick up Batman: The Dark Knight before this, because the few issues that I looked at kind of bored me. I mean,
Really?
yeah, I think Finch can draw a really kick-ass Batman. I'm not real keen on how he draws some other people,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not a real big fan.
So it's just the art that you objected to initially?
Basically,
Okay.
and it, yeah, so it didn't interest me a whole bunch, and yeah, so for some totally abstract gut reason, it was the Bat title decided I wasn't picking up.
Mm.
It didn't hook me enough, and at the time there were lots of Bat titles out, even more than there are now, and it was like, okay, do we really need one more? And there was nothing about it that just immediately hooked me, so I decided I wasn't going to get it. And so when the relaunch happened, I understood that basically he was going to be that Finch was going to be giving some ideas, but that he wasn't going to be the person writing it because he can't write and draw at the same time.
Not and get the issues out in a regular
Well, yeah,
basis.
that was
Yeah.
another thing is if I would have been picking up the last thing, I would have been pissed. How long was it between issues? A couple of months or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Nuts. Anyway, and that many months between issues, and I don't think you were getting anything that was so knockout that justified the the space between them, the delay in issues.
No, no, we definitely did not.
So, because I mean, we've had this conversation before. I don't have a problem with delays if what I'm getting it really is top quality product. You know, I wouldn't have a problem with delays in like Batwoman, for instance, if that's what it took to get the product that we're getting, because it's just awesome. That isn't the case here here for me. So yeah, I mean, I don't think they're gonna have delay issues with this book because DC's just flat out said it's not going to happen. There are not going to be delays in their books. They're going to come out when they're supposed to come out. Period.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how long they can maintain that. I hope they do. But so yeah, I mean that's basically the big reason why it was at the time when they were first coming out. It was like I don't need another Bat title, and then with the relaunch, it was like okay, I still don't see any reason to any need to continue to pick this book up. So
Yeah.
so I just didn't.
Well, I did pick it up, and I also picked up the previous incarnation, delays and all, because I didn't really know David Finch's work all that much, but I started noticing that he had been doing some covers for
Yeah.
DC, and then I heard that he was given, the Dark Knight book because he really wanted to write and draw a Batman book.
Well, I understand that that's how they got him from Marvel.
Yeah.
He was a big Marvel talent, and one of the ways they got him to sign with DC was because they were going to give him a Bat book because that's really, really what he wanted to do.
Yeah, yeah, and so I got it just to see how it is, and it was okay. I mean, it looked pretty. His art is depending on the inker, could be really good to it's just okay. I think this particular issue, the new Batman: The Dark Knight #1, I don't know that the inker necessarily complements his work all that much. Based on what I'm recalling from the previous series. But it's not bad. I've seen worse depictions of Batman. I mean, this, especially Finch's Bruce Wayne looks like what Bruce Wayne looks like to me in my mind's eye. This guy looks like Bruce Wayne, whereas Capullo's Bruce Wayne's like, not so much. Daniel's not so much. It's close, but I mean, so I think he does that. His Batman looks really good in general, although Finch's Batman kind of grimaces a lot. I know that's like saying the obvious. Batman grimaces. What?
That's like saying the Joker smiles.
Yeah, exactly. but it's just all the time he's grimacing, and I'm like, he's often his bat jet or his bat boat or whatever, his bat transportation device, and he's grimacing all the time. Like, really, does Batman need to grimace all the time?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, he definitely draws women beautifully. There's a new character, Jaina Hudson, that's introduced here, and you get this one full page of her entire body, and she looks very nice, for a comic book a Batman comic book.
I see. I don't like the way he draws women,
Really?
or at least I don't like the covers I'm seeing. The covers that he's cranking out, I can't stand the way he makes Wonder Woman look. There's a cover of there's some covers coming up of Birds of Prey that he did. I can't stand the way they look in that.
Oh, okay.
They're waspy waists and stuff.
Oh, sure. Now, when I say he draws women nicely, it's just, he draws a very, how do I want to say this?
Traditional superhero. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah, the traditional 13-year-old loves this kind of look.
Okay.
So that's what I mean by that. But having said that, I don't give a one whit about this new character being introduced, and it's just some new woman that Bruce Wayne's going to have some sort of relationship with in this comic, I assume. Let's see. We have yet again looks like an Arkham Asylum. Yes, it is Arkham Asylum. Another a security breach, and you get all these villains breaking out of Arkham Asylum. Now, I don't know if this is related to some of the other titles that we've talked about, where he's fighting villains in Arkham Asylum, or if it's just all of the new writers wanted to have a scene of Batman fighting all the villains in Arkham Asylum, but they never talk to each other. There's no relationship to it. It just appears like there's yet another breakout in Arkham Asylum.
Yeah.
Which, it's not all that interesting to me. There's a thing at the end where Two-Face shows up, and he looks like he's all hyped up on what's that the stuff that Bane uses, that juice that he gets all
the venom, the Bane venom.
Yeah, the venom, the Bane venom. Yeah, it looks like he's all juiced up on that. Which, okay, I suppose that's fine for a particular plot point, but I don't know. Why do we have to mix all that up? I guess I'm this is more of a reaction to seeing. Remember how Secret Six ended with all of the Secret Six injecting themselves with the Bane venom and then fighting all the heroes because that was their only shot. In other words, I'm getting tired of, I guess, the Bane venom being this go-to thing to make the villains, bigger and badder and all that stuff. And then at the very end, Batman calls out Two-Face, and then he shows up this splash page at the very end where he's all baned out, and he says, "Two-Face no longer, Batty boy. You can call me One-Face now." Except, he's still Two-Face.
Right.
He still has his two faces. I don't get that. This is while I did get the however many issues of the last series, I think it was maybe 5 that came out ultimately.
Yeah.
Maybe 6, I can't remember now. I did get that. Did get that run. I will not be continuing with this. There's nothing really here that interests me about the character or the story. So, despite David Finch's art, which is here, I think, less interesting than what he did in the first couple issues of the previous series.
Yeah.
So, but maybe that's because he had to surrender a certain amount of creative control so they could get the book out in time.
Could be.
There's that. I would say so. Out of so we have the Batman comics. Oh well, we're going to talk about. No, we're not. We already did. So we have Batman Detective, Batman and Robin, Batman the Dark Knight. Am I missing one?
Nope. As far as direct Batman titles?
Yeah. So would you agree, Travis, that Batman is the title to read out of those 4?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say
so. If you're only gonna pick one, it's definitely the one to get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next on the list is Blackhawks #1, which neither of us read.
Nope.
So why didn't you read that one?
From what little I remember reading of the solicitations, to tell you the truth, now I can't remember exactly what it said. Mm-hmm. It didn't interest me a whole lot. The name recognition alone isn't enough to make me want to necessarily get it. I'm not a big fan. I mean, the Blackhawks are just kind of there as a whole. I like Lady Blackhawk because I like her. It has less to do with her being a Blackhawk, other than that's her experience, than it has to do with I just like that character from the Birds of Prey. I knew she wasn't going to be in this. because this is a modern day version of whatever. I mean, my understanding was the original Blackhawks were a particular squadron that was fighting during World War II.
Hmm.
I don't know exactly what these are. I've heard from other people that this actually wasn't a bad comic, that it was actually kind of interesting.
Hmm.
But just not my thing. It struck me as being kind of a mercenary good guys organization fighting against other organizations, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know. It didn't. Yeah, there wasn't anything about it that struck me as being something that I would be interested in.
yeah. I've heard it referred to as this is a good GI Joe comic
Yeah, which
for not being a GI Joe comic.
right, which for some people that's going to be great.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but that's not my thing, and I guess that's why I didn't pick it
Hmm.
up.
Yeah, exactly the same reason
Now,
for me.
now, now, if they had made Lady Blackhawk a dominant character off the very bat, I probably would have at least picked up the first issue just to see what was going on in it.
Yeah,
But
that wouldn't have been enough of a draw for me at all.
well, I would have still, like I said, I know you don't like her, but I still would have picked up at least the first issue. I mean, it still didn't sound like it would have had a necessarily what I would be interested in, but I would at least picked it up for that just to see what they were going to do with the character.
Yeah.
Whereas the character wasn't even in it, so there was, like I said, nothing to draw me in. So that's why I didn't get it.
Yep. Same reasons for me too. All right, Blackhawks. That was Blackhawks. Next on the list, The Flash, #1. All right. This is one you did not read, correct?
I did not read.
Okay, this is one that I was not going to get at all because I did not care, like I mentioned earlier, for some reason. I just, from Flash Rebirth on, I haven't cared one whit. I said that before, but I just don't care about Barry Allen anymore as the Flash. But I decided, this is one of the ones I picked up off the shelf at the comic book shop one time when I was there, just to see. This is written by Francis Manapul, who also does the art, and Brian Buccellato, that's a writer I'm simply not familiar with. Oh, and he also does the colors, Mr. Buccellato. That's interesting.
Right.
No, that's it. So yeah, art by Francis Manapul. So let's see. So I picked up the previous version of this series, at least the first 6 issues, with Francis Manapul doing the art, and Jeff Johns wrote the title. And I was not impressed at all. And I dropped it after that first 6 issues. And I remember Jeff Johns, at various con appearances and also interviews he did, just talking up a storm about working with Francis Manapul and how great he is and all this stuff. And this is just one of those times where I just said, you hear how people love this particular artist or writer or whatever, like Scott Snyder, you really like his stuff, and I'm not all that keen on him.
Uh-huh.
Francis Manapul, like Gary Frank, another person that collaborates with Jeff Johns, I do not care for their art. There's just something about it that just turns me off. So when I saw that Francis Manapul was not only doing the art for this new Flash series, but he was co-writing it, I thought, well, that's a big pass for me. That's an obvious one. But like I said, I picked it up and I read it. I have to say, I actually did like the art on this. I guess I'm starting to think or see Francis Manapul's art in a new light. I think he does the Flash, the running bit, the super speed bit pretty well. There's some really interesting visuals here, even though we're using more or less a traditional panel layout throughout the comic. There's the color palette is kind of muted, not to the extent of what we saw in All Star Western, but it's still the scenes with Barry tend to be more cooler colors, and of course the Flash is going to be more warmer colors, and so we get those pages that are colored like that. So it fits well, I guess, is what I'm saying. Beyond that, though, and one more thing about the art. There's page 3 where Barry is starting to run, and we get basically 5 panels of him on this page, and he's running towards us, and how the Flash has his flash ring and the costume comes out of it,
Right.
that traditional look.
Mhm.
Well, in this case, it's not like his whole suit expanding out of the ring like we used to see, which was at the same time both kind of cool and kind of, what the hell is that? At least that's how I looked at his ring, his costume in his ring. But here, Francis Manapul has basically they're like pieces of his costume, so it looks more armor-like, and so you get these pieces kind of popping out of his ring, and they just kind of form around him as he's running.
Mm.
And while the logical part of my brain goes, well, how does that work? Um, without the pieces just kind of flying off as they come
Right.
out of his ring. Plus, how do these armor what look like are shards? Not they don't look like cloth. They look like hard pieces of costuming.
Right.
How does that work? But anyway, it looks pretty cool though the way he's drawn it. I have to
Mm.
admit. But that's a one-time image. If you see that a lot, it's just going to be like, oh, that's it's nothing. Um, So again, though, I think as far as like a first issue thing, this is probably not as successful as some others for some of the major characters that we've talked about. It does rely on, you kind of have to know that Barry Allen's the Flash. I mean, it does say that here. My name is Barry Allen. To the world, I'm the fastest man alive. Um, but again, the Flash is kind of like one of those characters. I think the general public just kind of knows, right? Would you agree? That he's not to the level of Batman and Superman, say, but the Flash is the guy who runs fast.
I suppose, yeah. I don't know. I mean, because he's not on the level of Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman.
But he had that TV series back in the 80s. I mean
He did.
that okay, blink if you missed it, but
Right.
he did have a series on
Okay.
network television. Um,
I guess, yeah. He's relatively recognizable. Yeah.
yeah, relatively. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So you don't really need a whole lot to introduce him, which I think they take advantage of. But at the same time, there is some stuff in here that made me think, well, if you didn't read Flashpoint or even the previous Flash series, you might be a little bit lost, but maybe not. Maybe just because I know this stuff, I see the connections, the obvious connections.
Yeah.
Um, so sometimes I find it hard to think along the lines of, well, this works or it doesn't work to a new reader.
Right.
Um, so I think it's a pretty successful first issue for the most part. Like I said, the art is growing on me, but it's not something that the character doesn't interest me that much, like with you and Aquaman and Green Lantern. Um, there's nothing there that makes me go, this is interesting and I want to read more. So I think like you, the Flash works really well with the Justice League, but on his
Yeah.
own, I
In a
don't know.
team. Right.
I mean, the guy runs fast.
Uh-huh.
Big whoop.
Well, all Aquaman can do is talk to fish. Big
Yeah, yeah,
whoop.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Whatever. He doesn't talk to fish. He says that specifically in the issue.
Oh,
I don't
I
talk to fish. Fish cannot talk.
know.
All right. So that's the Flash. Um, next, you did read this one, right?
Yes, I did.
The Fury of Firestorm, the Nuclear Men. So go ahead, Travis.
Yes. Let's see. They say here plotted by Ethan Van Sciver and Gail Simone. Gail Simone, writer, artist. Yeah, Yidiri Sinar is the artist. Colors by Stephen Buccellato.
Stephen Buccellato?
Steve.
Wow. So, huh. So is he related to Brian?
I don't know.
Weird. That's weird. Okay, go ahead.
I just as a frame of reference, I've collected since I've collected comics. Anytime there's been a Firestorm comic, I have collected it. Gone back and bought back issues of Firestorm when it was out before I started collecting them. I'm a big Firestorm fan.
Hmm.
Um, I like the character. I like the ideas. I like the stuff that the guy can do and whatnot. I was excited about this comic book because, of course, it was going to have Gail Simone writing it, and I'm a big Gail Simone fan.
Hmm.
But I,
That's a big but.
yeah, I did. I did not really care for this comic. I didn't like the way it was put together. Um, it felt jilted, like it kind of stopped and started. I mean, the beginning of it, these people that are hunting for something because they don't tell you what they're hunting for, and obviously are pretty brutal and seem to kill and maim, and it doesn't bother them one bit, as they basically slice somebody's throat and then need a knife to cut an apple, and they offer up the bloody knife and whatnot. I don't know. I didn't care for that. Um, we get introduced to Ronnie. I don't mind him as a character. He seems okay. Kind of falls into the trope of the dumb football guy. But it's not that he's dumb. He's just not great at school, and football is what he's good at, and that's
Hmm.
all well and fine.
Hmm.
They introduce Jason again in this, and from my perspective, Jason's a total jackass. I don't care for the character at all. I liked him in the last version of Firestorm, when he had his own series.
Hmm.
Here he's got some serious beef on his shoulder. And I guess that's supposed to be the stereotypical, I'm not a jock, I'm a journalist, and therefore I don't like you because you're a dumb jock. Is that what that's supposed to be? I don't know. I didn't care for it. And the whole implication that that Ronnie and his family are racist and whatnot. I don't know. I didn't care. I didn't care for that. I was confused by the page that has all the different versions of Firestorm on it.
Hmm.
I was confused by that. Does that imply that there are these other Firestorms out there, or there were out there, or whatever? I mean, one of them is Firebird. Is that her name?
Hmm.
It looks like, or a version of that. But I don't know who these other Firestorms are. Do you?
No.
I mean, so does that make you think that there are more of them walking around?
Yeah, certainly so. Yeah. Or they were.
Yeah. So that panel confused me. And I don't know the fighting between the two people who end up becoming Firestorm.
Hmm.
I don't know. I'm curious. I'm curious when the fight all starts happening and the bad guys get zapped and whatnot. There's some. Do you think that's gonna be Killer Frost?
Yeah.
Okay. I like the art. I like
Really?
the arts. The art's fine. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I like it when they turn into Firestorm. They look freaking cool then, all hot and whatnot. And then they become this big giant thing,
Yeah,
who's
Fury.
its own entity. It's not them. It's something else.
Hmm.
I don't know. I was not happy with this book. I wasn't. I was pretty disappointed. I don't know if I just had high expectations for it or what, but I don't know.
Well,
Well, the only draw for me for this book is Firestorm, the title. So I don't know what I'm going to do with it. It's on my poll, so I'm committed to a 3-month purchase of it. I just ordered comics just this weekend, and I ordered number 4, but I don't know. Once I get number 3, number 2, that's probably going to determine whether or not I keep putting it on my poll or not.
hmm Yeah,
Yeah.
this title's one of those on the cusp for me. It's like, well, that's being nice, more than fair because, yeah, I agree with you. This first issue, not good overall. And I think, like you said, did you have high expectations? I think we did,
Yeah.
considering that Gail Simone was attached to it.
Yeah.
Ethan Van Sciver is,
He's an
I
artist,
like his
right?
art.
Yeah.
But if this read to me like there was more Van Sciver than Simone in the story.
Yeah.
And I've never been a huge fan of Sinar's artwork. He did Legion of Superheroes for a while.
Uh-huh.
And I think, again, this is one of those artists that I think benefits from a different inker. Him
Yeah.
doing his own inks, I found the art to be muddy, and sometimes the anatomy just doesn't look right. Some
Mm.
people's arms just don't look correct. Um, it's just, or their legs for that matter. I'm looking at the football scenes. Um, yeah, I was not wowed by this at all. I don't like the idea that there's this firestorm matrix out there, and that at least we're shown at least 5 characters in the
Right.
one scene that you mentioned that
Right.
are firestorm-like beings. And I kind of don't like that. I like the idea of, our hero,
Being unique.
Firestorm, being the first one of the bunch,
Yeah.
but that they're definitely not going that way. And I suppose that's fine in general. I agree with you about the characterization between Ronnie and Jason. They both come across as putzes
Mm.
and stereotypes to some degree, but I think they also undercut those stereotypes a little bit in the individual scenes. So that's, there's a little bit of promise there
Right.
for the characters. And then they become Firestorm. And I have to say, Firestorm is supposed to be this fusion of 2 beings, at least before. And
Uh-huh.
then what they've done here is is they become Firestorm, but they're distinct individuals.
Right.
And one's Ronnie's the red version, and Jason's the yellow. So you get the visual there. So that they're distinct to you. But again, come back to characterization. Once they turn into it, they just immediately start. Ronnie goes off the deep end and just starts blasting away with to me laughable dialogue like, "What the hell did you do?" And just the way it's presented.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really. So you're Ronnie, and you get turned into this firestorm creature. Your hair's on fire. You have this costume on now. Who came up with that? You can throw fire around, and I don't know what else they're really shown. I guess Jason's the one that's shown actually transforming things,
Right.
and and his reaction is to, "What did you do to us? I'm going to kill you now," basically,
Right.
or beat you up, I guess. Not really
As
kill you.
opposed to the guys with the guns that are after him, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so he's attacking Jason. Jason says, "I saved your life." And you call this life? I'm sorry. This just happened to you, and you have the wherewithal to think about how this is going to transform your life going
Well, he
forward?
was worried about his hair earlier.
Sure.
So they've already established the
I
guy is
I
pretty
guess. I,
is
I
pretty naked.
yeah.
How dare you say I, don't take care of my own hair? I
It's
don't
just,
know.
yeah, okay. So you get that kind of vacuous
Yeah.
personality,
Right.
so to speak, and then
Yeah.
you get this kind of existential perspective from him. You call this life? Are we even human anymore? I'm sorry, you will not be asking those kinds of questions at that
Right.
moment. It just doesn't make any sense. And then you
Yeah.
just get the stereotypical superhero versus superhero battle between them, and then the stuff with Killer Frost being introduced. I have to admit that last splash page where they've combined and now they're Fury. So now we get the callback to the title of the issue, or the
Right.
title. I'm sorry, the title of this comic, The Fury of Firestorm.
Mhm.
And you get this new character, this combination between the two, whatever that means. But and I have to say the art there, that Sinar does a good job on that, but the rest of the issue, it just doesn't kind of fulfill the promise that I see in this last page, splash
Mhm.
page. Yeah, boy, I really wanted to like this comic.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't read, I think I read one of. Uh, did you get trades from that previous version of Firestorm featuring Jason?
No, every single issue.
Oh, you got the issues. I
I
thought
got singles. Yeah.
I think maybe you let me read those issues then. But I
Yeah.
remember reading some like the first arc of the previous title, and I enjoyed it. I liked the Jason character. He's since become part of the DC animated stuff, so he's shown up like in Batman: Brave and the Bold,
Right.
and actually the idea of Ronnie being like the football guy and Jason being the like the science guy, and they merge into Firestorm.
Hmm.
in the Batman Brave and the Bold episode. Although Ronnie's the coach
Right.
in that, but
Right. Right.
you
Right. I
get that
remember that.
you kind of get the same kind of
Hmm.
Firestorm combination here, although totally different take between the two characters.
Right.
But you get Jason as Firestorm as the dominant personality in the animated series, and I really like that portrayal. So I
Hmm.
was liking the character in general and the way he was portrayed in another media. Um, but here, I this yeah, like you said, going forward, I'll probably drop this one. In fact, I need to decide if I'm going to even order issue 4. But so like you said, issue 2 will definitely decide how much I go forward with this.
Yeah.
Disappointing considering that Gail Simone is part of this. I mean,
Yes.
and she was
Love Gail, but I don't know what happened here.
yeah,
But
because she was on Twitter just really pushing the book and how great the ideas that they had and all this stuff it's we really need to caution ourselves, but also other folks who may be listening to this. You probably shouldn't judge the whole series by one issue, but man, as an introductory issue, yeah, it's definitely I think a new reader friendly title because you get everything from the get go.
yep.
You don't need to know who these characters are. You don't need to know that there's a past version of Firestorm and all this stuff because you get everything all in this package. Um,
Right.
but for us fans of the character, of Firestorm,
Yeah.
uh, this is not something that really interests me.
Yeah. Well, my issue comes back to the characters. Why would I care about these people? This first issue, you know, Ronnie's kind of a dimwit, and Jason's a jerk. Why would I care about him? I don't want to read about a jerk. So,
But
they didn't give me anything there for me to care. So I don't know.
so you don't think that the scenes after they had their little altercation, um, so Ronnie goes home and talks to his own. Why don't we have any black friends? And
Right.
and the scene with Jason and his dad, and also his is that his girlfriend? I can't remember now. The girl who sent him on to get the story for the paper. Um, I don't know. Granted, the initial kind of introduction of these characters, you do get the stereotype, but I thought they were. I thought the the stereotype was undercut by these self-reflective scenes with these characters talking to other people. So
Sure.
I think that there's something there. I just
There wasn't enough.
enough of it. Yes.
There wasn't enough. There wasn't enough. That's, you know, yeah. Hints of Gale there, but it wasn't enough, I guess.
Yeah, and of course, I have no insider knowledge whatsoever, but I think that the good character moments in this book are from a direct result of Gail Simone's involvement in this. I think the other bits you and I are reacting to that we do not
Hmm.
like, I bet you that's mostly Van Sciver at
Yeah.
work there.
I heard wild rumors that Gale's not going to be on this book, but none of that's backed by anything other than wild rumor.
Did the rumors address why she's not going to be on the book?
Editorial.
Huh.
That's what Bleeding Cool says. But like I said, that's wild rumor. That was picked up at the bar during New York Con while drinking heavily. So, I don't know. This is really bad. Like I said, I love Firestorm character. I almost hope that's the case because then that gives me just one more reason to get away from the title.
Oh,
That's how disappointed I am in the book.
hmm
But part of the disappointment is in that it's not like some of the other 52 I picked it up and went like Grifter. I picked it up and got it and went, oh, this just isn't for me. It stank. I'm done with it because I have attachments as a fan to so many parts of this book. I want it to be a good book, and it wasn't that. And so,
hmm
very disappointed.
Yeah. All right. Well, shall we move on?
Sure.
All right. Next up is Green Lantern New Guardians #1, and this is one that you did not read because it's Green Lantern.
That's right.
Written by Tony Bedard, penciler Tyler Kirkham. Um, it's really interesting these artists with one names. Batt, B-A-T-T, is the inker.
Hmm.
Nay Ruffino is the colorist. Okay, so I picked this up. So I get the main Green Lantern comic, and we talked last time or the previous one, I can't remember now. But Green Lantern Corps, I do not pick up because I just don't. I have no interest in the Corps in general. But I wanted to pick this title up specifically because it continues on with that whole color guard theme that has been developed ever since Blackest Night, and even before that a little bit. So you get I guess the concept here, especially if you look at the cover image, is that you have members of each color core coming together for various reasons. The plot device that they use here is that one ring from each of the color guard gets called away from its current bearer. And somehow, for some reason, they all go to Kyle Rayner, who is one of the Green Lanterns. And that's part of the mystery of this title, is to, initially to find out why they all go to Kyle. I really, where I don't care to read about a bunch of additional Green Lanterns and Green Lantern Corps, I am intrigued by reading about all of these various other Lantern Corps. Like I said, I really enjoyed Blackest Night. I enjoyed the story coming out of Green Lantern after that, involving the various corps. You get the story starts off basically as an introduction to Kyle Rayner, how he became Green Lantern. So you get that new reader-friendly vibe to it. If you're familiar with that, it's kind of wasted pages. But from a new reader's perspective, you get that. And then you get introduced to the idea, here's these other folks that have rings, and they do various things. Most of them are bad guys, or they do bad things, or they're trying to save people because they're good guys. But you get a sense of what these other Lantern Corps characters are about. And at the very end of the issue, all of these rings come to Kyle and say he has been chosen. And then these other characters from the Lantern Corps all come to Kyle and say, okay, why did you steal these rings? And he's like, what the heck? So that sets up the plot of the first arc. So that's it on that. The art, I have to say, not so great. There are times when people look like, they look like people. Other times it's just this kind of an inky mess on the page. It's not bad. It's just not great. It's really interesting. The artist, I talked before about not Capullo, the artist on Batman. Who was that? That's Capullo, right?
It's Capullo.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How his Batman looks really good, but his Bruce Wayne doesn't. It's kind of the opposite here with Kirkham, because his Kyle Rayner looks pretty good, but then his Kyle Rayner as Green Lantern, not so much. So it's really interesting how that occurs. Let's see. Beyond that, this is really, for me, it's this idea of these rings all coming to Kyle is what's driving me to want to read more of it. Do I see that this title has any kind of long-term longevity, or does it have a longevity? Is what I'm trying to say. I'm not so sure. I'm not convinced that they know what they're doing with this title yet, but we'll see as this first arc unfolds.
So, just so I understand this right, Kyle has one of every ring now. Plus, there is a guardian of every color there, also.
Yeah, essentially, there is a ring bearer for every color that's coming after Kyle for having the ring of their guard, their color guard.
Okay. So, but they have their rings.
They have their own ring, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not like he took the rings from them.
That's correct. He had nothing to do with it. They just
he's got a handful of rings.
Yes.
Interesting. So Kyle's a pretty messed up guy if he's packing all those rings, huh?
Well,
Just
okay, technically, he doesn't
just
actually
thought.
have possession of the rings. They're just kind of there around him. So he hasn't actually like put them on or anything. They're just kind of floating around him. When all
Okay.
these other color guard characters show up saying, "Give me back the ring. Why did you take them?" And he, of course, he has no idea what's going on and why.
They keep track of their rings that closely?
Apparently,
Okay. I mean, I always thought it was when one Green Lantern, because that's all I know, gets whacked, then the ring goes and finds somebody else, right?
that's true. Yeah, again, what's interesting about this is, I mean, that's usually that's what we've been shown in the past, is
Right.
that if you're a Yellow Lantern or an Indigo tribe member
Whichever.
or
Right.
whatever, once you die, that ring goes off and finds someone who's worthy to possess it. What we're shown here is that they didn't die. The ring just leaves their finger and heads off
Oh,
to go to Kyle.
interesting.
And of course, that has some detrimental effects on some of these former ring bearers.
Sure.
uh, like one of the Star Sapphires, she's out in space trying to save this group of travelers from space pirates, and then the ring leaves her, and then she's in space.
Right.
Fortunately, she's saved by one of her fellow members, but some of these other color guard people are not so lucky.
Yeah. It would be awful.
Yeah, I would.
Huh. Interesting.
Although some of these characters are, doing bad things, so it's kind of like just desserts. But yeah, the premise is what's keeping me here, or what started me on this title. But I'm not so sure that I'll continue with it after the first arc. So, all right. Next up, go ahead, Travis. I, Vampire.
I, Vampire. Written by Joshua Hale Falkov
Hmm.
and Andre Sorrentino, with colors by Marcelo Milo. I'm not a big. This is a comic that was not on my pull. I picked this up off the shelf. I wasn't going to get it. It's vampires. I mean, I think vampires are cool, but I don't need to read about vampires anymore. I've read enough about vampires. So, yeah, I mean, between all the books I've read about it and doing my best to avoid the Twilight stuff and all that kind of stuff, I had this. No, I don't need to read about vampires. I mean, fine, there's gonna be vampires in the DC universe, fine, but no reason whatsoever to pick this book up. Then I saw some preview art for it and went, oh, I need to pick that up because I love the way it looked. And sure enough, I absolutely love the tone and look of this book. It looks and reads very much like a Vertigo title. That's my frame of reference
Hmm.
around it, between the subject matter and the look of it, whatnot. I love the tones. I love how dark it is. I love the fact that it's heavily inked, like it is. I even like the story, which of course was the part I was still kind of wondering whether or not I was going to like it, just because, like I said, I'm not that interested in vampires as a whole. The fact that there's this. Well, it's kind of a love story and conquer the world. All both things are going on. This one vampire is trying to keep another vampire and a whole brood from, asserting their dominance over the planet, and the main character is trying to keep that from happening. And he's, I think, pointed out the fact that if they try to do this, that the superpowered people of the world are going to potentially come and extinguish them if they
Hmm.
try to do this, which I think is interesting. So part of me is curious going into the future of this book, how much are we going to actually see superheroes and what kind of a part are they going to play? I mean, because I would think that Superman with heat vision could raise holy hell on a bunch of vampires.
Or Green Lantern with his light, yeah.
Right, so that whole part will be interesting to see. The one thing that frustrated me about the book was there's lots of they'll be showing you a scene and there's two people talking. Our main character and Andrew, is that his name?
Yeah.
Drawing a blank right now.
Hmm.
And Mary. Mary's the other seems to be the main character. That's the the antagonist. And sometimes when they're not, the two of them aren't actually being shown talking to each other in the past, because there's parts of this that are set in the past. Um, the dialogue's still going on, and it's just little colored panels.
Hmm.
The colors are so close together, the difference in kind of a lighter pink and a darker pink, that I really had to pay attention to make sure that didn't get confused as to who was saying what, because they're so colored, the panels are so colored together. That was my one beef with this book. Was I really had to go, okay, it did change color, okay. The tint of those two, because it's kind of I don't know, a really dark off orange and an off pink.
Hmm.
And the two colors look awfully close together. But yeah, I love the look of the book. Art wise, I really like it, and so that's what's selling me on it the most. The the relationship between the two could be interesting. How this guy is going to take on basically what seems to be the rest of the vampire race is going to be interesting. I mean, how is he going to manage to try and kill all of these people without getting himself killed?
Hmm.
Will be interesting. What do you think?
Well, like you, vampires are not something that I particularly care to read about. You mentioned how you not managed, or you've managed to not get drawn into the whole Twilight thing. Is that correct?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I have, because I have a daughter and a wife who absolutely love the Twilight series. My daughter has read all the books, and I have been, I won't say forced, but it has been requested of me to watch the movies with my daughter.
I'm sorry.
And and so I do, because I love my daughter and she likes to share things with me. I'm going to partake in that. However, yeah, that whole Twilight stuff is just crap. So, having said that, and I'm a big fan of the Buffy series, the Buffy TV series as well. I read the Buffy comic. I'm now reading the Angel comic. That's more vampire stuff.
Hmm.
Um, I used to read a lot of vampire fiction many years ago. I'm basically vampired out. So I had no interest in this. Plus, when I saw the cover, I'm like, oh, they're going for the Twilight audience.
Right.
So that just instantly turned me off. So I wasn't going to pick it up. However, after it came out, I started hearing rumblings about it. I didn't see the preview art like you did, but I heard people talking about this title, about how surprised they were at how much they enjoyed it. So I decided to pick it up off the shelf. And like you, I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Sorrentino art, she does, I think, a great job at evoking the mood that they're going for with this. I like how uh, the present and the past have different shades of color.
Hmm. Hmm.
The past is more, again, like kind of like I said with Flash. It's more cooler colors,
Right.
and the present day, it's warmer colors, more browns and reds and oranges and stuff. I hadn't noticed what you had said about the boxes. I just I guess I just kind of saw it and didn't really pay attention to it.
Hmm.
But I see your point. That that could be somewhat confusing. They could have done something else, I guess.
Hmm.
I did enjoy the story. I like the setup. I like the premise of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The iVampire character is one that's been around for many years. They mostly don't do anything with him. Um, so I'm familiar with the premise. But I like this take on it. They're showing these characters as younger. DC's going for they've de-aged everybody.
Right.
So normally Andrew is shown as a bit older in the previous versions that we've seen, but here I don't have a problem with that. I'm just pointing that
Yeah.
out.
I mean, I'm not familiar with the character at all. So
Um, I really, what I really liked about this was the conversations that Andrew and Mary had,
Mary have, yeah,
mostly in the past, the flashback stuff. It really sets up, I think, the characters and the conflict. If they don't just do the typical, we have a relationship, but we're enemies now, so we're going to fight.
yeah,
He's just trying to convince her, and she wants nothing to do with it.
right,
She's not even particularly trying to convince him. She just wants to do her own thing and wants him to leave her alone. And I like that dynamic. And then you get towards the end, and he's there's a trap that he's been drawn into, and we have that bit about like you said about this, if we continue along these lines, the superheroes are going to come and they're going to kill us all.
yeah.
And yeah, I am intrigued by that. I'm really, I almost want to get this book, Travis. I did not want to read another book about vampires, or read any stories about vampires for that matter.
Yeah.
But I'm intrigued by it.
Well,
So,
this is on my poll.
oh, you did that?
When I read my comics this weekend, this went on my poll. Number 4 went on my poll. I'll have to pick up 2 and 3 off the shelf. Next, as we're recording this coming week is number 2 comes out. There's no doubt in my mind I'm getting it.
Well, I may have to change my mind and pick this up off the shelf as well, just to see. This will probably be the one where I get at least the first arc, and like I said, for the story, the good story that I'm reading, and also the Sorrentino art. That's just yeah, it should be interesting to see where this goes with considering our reservations about a vampire story.
Right, right.
And so we both mentioned the superhero aspect of it. They bring it front and center in the book. But I mean, how would you feel about a superhero showing up in this book? Do we need to see the superheroes?
I hope not. I hope they're the veiled threat. I hope if we see them, they're passing overhead and miss what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Once you truly inject them in this, wouldn't it completely change the tone of the? I just can't imagine it not completely changing the tone of the book.
Yeah.
But at the same time, how long can they operate without?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would assume, because in this issue alone, where he's running away from the whole horde of them, because obviously he doesn't want to fight them all at one time, and he ends up screwing up and going down into the subway at the same time the subway train's showing up. They obviously slaughter that entire subway car.
Yeah, how is that going to go unnoticed by the superhero
Well, I'm
community?
assuming there's obviously in the comic book world, there's tons of horrible stuff goes on all the time, and there's no way everybody can get to all of it. But I would assume that sooner or later, if they continue to do those sorts of things, someone's going to come across it at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it too small for the really big people and too big for the really small people to deal with? I don't know. So that'll be interesting how they're going to walk that fine line. But you're right. I mean, if suddenly Superman landed in the middle of this comic, oh man, it pretty much blows the comic, doesn't it? I don't know. I guess that's wait and see. Because like I said, if they suddenly did that, yeah. I mean, are they going to drop Dark Justice in the middle of this thing?
Well,
I don't know.
you mean Justice League Dark?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's funny you say that because issue 4, Constantine shows up.
Right.
And the solicitation says straight from the pages of Justice League Dark, but I mean,
Right.
Constantine shows up, and it looks like they're going to have the struggle. And then in issue 5, Batman.
Seriously?
Yeah, Batman shows up.
Oh.
Which actually is not all that inconceivable in that we've had basically more or less team ups, and I put that in quotes, between Andrew and Batman in past Brave and the Bold issues. So I mean,
Sure.
there's a history there of the characters interacting. So yeah, but like you said, I guess we'll see how that goes. It's not so far up through issue 5. It's not like the Justice League shows up,
Right.
type thing. So, and maybe with this issue 5 with Andrew going to Batman, maybe that somehow addresses the fact that Andrew maybe convinces Batman to let him handle it. Although, can you imagine Batman letting that happen?
Oh, I can see Batman going, yeah, sure. and then keeping so close tabs on it that,
Oh, if it gets out of hand, then he calls in the Justice League. Yeah,
right,
that makes sense.
right. I mean, I can see him doing that.
Yeah.
Batman does let people, operate their own stuff, but he gives them definite fair warning the second it, is going to go wrong. He's going to, I can see Batman's delivering the line basically, I'm going to put you and all the rest of them down if, this isn't, if this isn't handled. So, yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't looked that far ahead. I try not to look at the solicitations too closely because sometimes it spoils what's going on now.
Yeah, well, exactly. Normally I don't either, but because I'm trying to decide if I want to continue with some of these titles, I have to take a look at this stuff.
Right. Well, it'll be interesting. Now I'm committed at least to that, just to see how that all gets addressed then.
All right. Well, I think that was a very successful first issue for more or I don't want to say horror because I don't, even though it's vampires and there's blood and death. I don't know. I guess I'm sure DC's calling it a horror title, right? But I don't know. I tend not to think of it as a horror title. But anyway, I think it's a pretty successful issue, and I'm looking forward to reading a few more issues at least.
Definitely.
All right, let's go on to the next one. Travis, why don't you take that one first, too?
Justice League Dark. And it is written by Peter Milligan with art by Mikel Janin. And colors by Ulysses Arnola.
All right.
I dislike the title of this book.
What, Justice League Dark?
Yes.
Oh God, yeah.
But I absolutely love this book. This is the book I've been waiting for forever.
Really?
Since I realized that there were magical superheroes, darker magical superheroes, this is the kind of book I've wanted. I love the Spectre. I love Phantom Stranger. All of the which of course neither of those guys are in this, but all of the magical oriented type superheroes I love. I wanted Shadow Pack to be so much more than what it was.
Oh yes, that's true.
I was excited by the idea of that. We got it initially. It was like, yeah, this might be cool, and then it just never really was cool. Then we had Zatanna's ongoing series. I was excited about that because, it could be so cool. I love that character, and it just never was cool for me. And this is finally it. This is finally takes that stuff and addresses, dark, bad things are out there that your standard superhero doesn't have the skills or abilities to deal with, and you need somebody that's going to be able to do that. And here we get it. Here it's shown to us. I love the art of this book. I think there's it seems like they drug over some of the stuff that happened in Flashpoint into this to some degree, with the fact that Enchantress and June have their separations going on, and that's causing a bit of issues in there. I like the introduction to most of the characters in here. The ones they show. The fact that there's all these multiple Junes on the highway getting ran over and whatnot, that was pretty cool and interesting. Like, whoa, what the hell? Shade's little introduction here is pretty cool. His girlfriend and what she is or isn't, that's going to be an interesting story in and of itself. I love the whole scene with the teeth.
Oh yeah.
It beats the crap out of Superman with the teeth. That was, that's damn awesome. I'm a sucker for any page of comic that has the page where it says, in neighboring towns, a shower of books in the dead language kill 6 people. On the farms, the cow gave birth to, mechanical meat slicers. The fact that this, nuclear power plant gains sentience and gets bored, that kind of stuff. I just eat that sort of stuff up. I am a huge fan of the writer Peter Milligan. I I purchase almost everything he writes. The only thing I haven't purchased that he's written is the Red Lanterns, because of course it's lanterns. Um, and I still wonder whether I should be getting it just because he writes it. I love Santana's dealing with Batman here,
Hmm.
where she ties him up and stuff. I don't know. I, I like this comic, and I like the idea of the comic. I still worry about Constantine being in it. I just feel like because I collect um, Hellblazer 2, which is a completely different reality, it worries me having him in two places like that. Um, and written by the same writer.
Hmm.
That it's going to affect my other comic that I dearly love. So I hope that doesn't happen. But yeah, I love this comic.
Yeah, this is good. Uh, the title aside. Oh, and Ryan Sook on the cover art,
Yep.
just beautiful.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's funny. Uh, as much as we are different about the things that we read, Travis, we
Yeah.
have as many things that we're alike on, and I agree with you 100%. This is the magical characters of the DC Universe book that I've been wanting to read too.
Yeah.
Um, I would have liked to have seen some other characters in this, and maybe we'll get them over time. But I like the makeup of this group so far, with the exception of I'm not a huge fan of gosh, what's his name? The guy with the madness vest, Shade. Jeez. Uh,
The guy with the Madness Fest?
yeah, Shade, the Changing Man.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just I got the Shade series, back in the 90s when it first came out, and I loved that.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I loved that title. Uh, However, him being part of a group, I've never particularly cared for.
Yeah.
But I mean, this could totally change my mind. It's just in my head, he doesn't work well with others, but we'll see how
Well,
that goes.
that may make it interesting
I,
because he's
I granted, I agree with that. Yeah. Yeah, that whole thing with his quote unquote girlfriend there,
oh
that is just creepy ass.
oh yeah.
This guy, yeah. There's I mean, from a character standpoint, this guy has some real issues, and I can't wait for Peter Milligan to basically get us into the meat
Yep.
of what all that means. I tweeted, you had commented on that too, but I tweeted about Enchantress being the quote unquote villain of the
Right.
story,
Right.
and I only dislike that on the surface because I like Enchantress
Oh sure.
as a character, as a protagonist, as a hero, that we saw in the Shadow Pact title.
Mm-hmm.
So for her to be, like I said, quote unquote, the villain, I just didn't like it from that perspective.
Oh okay.
But her being the antagonist here, makes sense, as opposed to some other, Dr. Faust, or some other
Right. Right.
magical bad
Right.
guy. I like that spin on it. Yeah, like you said, when the teeth scene where you have Wonder Woman, Superman, and Cyborg show up to try and handle this, and of course they really can't. So that prompts Zatanna to form her own Justice League. That's a great Genesis story.
Right.
And again, I want to say the Jen and art, uh, the scenes. Again, I don't know what it is. It seems like some artists draw female characters really well and male characters not so great.
Mm-hmm.
Or in this case, the scene with the Justice League, and maybe this is a conscious choice. The scene with the Justice League, well, I was going to say the art seems a little more unrefined or more jaggedy, except Wonder Woman looks absolutely gorgeous
Uh-huh.
in this. So I'm not sure what the differences are, but Zatanna looks just beautiful in this scene with her and Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Dove shows up in a couple panels, which I love, because that's the tie to Dead Man.
Right.
I know Dove does not fit in this, so I hope that's not something they come back to. And then Madame Xanadu is a character I've always enjoyed too.
Sure.
I missed the previous series of hers though. I didn't read any of it, so I'm really
The Vertigo title?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really intrigued to see her what they're going to do with her in the modern day, and just juxtapose that with what they do with her in the Demon Knights
Right.
title, in the medieval DC universe. So that'd be a nice. They may not. Nothing may come of that, but it'd be a nice juxtaposition, like I said, between the two, the same character in two different time periods. So, yeah, this is. I can't wait to read the next issue and issues of this book to see what they're going to do with this.
Yeah.
Some good stuff here. If you like the magical DC stuff.
Yeah. Which you're crazy if you don't.
Yeah. And think of all of the potential magical characters in the DCU that could come into this.
Right. They could be part of it at some point.
Well,
right.
yeah, and not necessarily, and maybe people join the team, or maybe people, they have a roster that comes in and out. That'd be fine with me. But just guest stars like Dr. Fate, and although that's a JSA character, so I don't know if that would actually happen now. But other characters that they could pull into here.
Well, there's tons out
there. Yeah. So yeah, I can't wait to read it. And I think it's a pretty darn good first issue for new readers. You don't have to know the backstories of all these characters. They're just they're magically related somehow.
Right.
Not between each other, I mean, but they have magical abilities, is what I meant to say.
Well, yeah, no assumptions are made. They don't confuse. They wouldn't confuse a new reader. I mean, there's some mystery there, obviously, because it wouldn't be fun if there wasn't mystery. But there's no assumptions that we would know something. Yeah. So I think so. I do think it works.
All right. Anything else for Justice League Dark, Travis?
Nope.
All right. So next on our list, the Savage Hawkman #1. You did not read this one, right?
That is correct.
Okay. So Savage Hawkman, written by Tony Daniel, art by Philip Tan, colors by Sunny Go. Okay. So Hawkman. Hawkman is one of those characters, and I think I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but Hawkman is one of those characters where I don't know why I like him so much, because basically he's just a guy who has wings, who flies, and he has medieval weapons.
He
smashes things. Yeah. You'd think that there would not be that much to interest me or anybody else about this character, but for some reason that mixture works, and so I wanted to get this first issue and see how the new Hawkman, considering that Hawkman, the Carter Hall version of Hawkman anyway, has traditionally been a JSA character. And of course, we don't have the Justice Society in the DC universe anymore. But here we have a Carter Hall / Hawkman character in the DCU. So how does that all work? Well, as it turns out, not very well. There's a few things about this title, this particular issue, that I kind of liked, but mostly I have to say I'm not all that impressed with the take, with what they're doing with this. I'm pre-ordered for 3, but I don't think I'll. Well, I actually did order number 4. Because I read that it was the finale of the first arc. So I just kind of want, since I'm getting 3, I might as well get the next one just to have the story.
Right.
But I will not continue with this. We get introduced to Carter Hall at page 1. Here he is. He's traveling in his truck. He goes out to the forest, and he tries to. It looks like he's trying to. Okay, so he pours some alcohol on it, and it looks like it's a flare gun, I suppose. I thought it was just a regular gun, and he shoots his Hawkman mask, his helmet, and his wings, and says, "Die, you SOB." But of course, and he says, and then he buried. I'm confused. So I read this before, and I'm looking at it again right now as I'm talking to you, and I'm still confused as to what exactly is going on in these panels. So that's not good.
Yeah.
I'm not all that familiar with Philip Tan's work. I've heard people talk about Tan's work. What I see here is not so great. it's messy. Um, there's not a lot of definition here, and
Yeah.
I realize that's probably Tan's style, or
He changed styles for this book.
okay.
Yeah,
Well,
he's been
it's
working on a new style, and this is the book you're getting to see the most of it. He started to tweak it in the end of. He was one of the artists for the end of Batman and the Outsiders,
okay.
and he started changing a little bit there, and then did some significant changes going into this book. I haven't actually really looked at that book,
Oh,
but I hear he did significant changes in his style for it,
yeah.
and you're
Well,
not liking it.
it does not work for me. Um, so anyway, she tries to kill his uniform. I guess is the best way to put it. And then,
Okay.
but the uniform doesn't want to let him go, and envelops him in this hawk looking flame monster. And then we go to the next scene. Turns out that Carter Hall in this new DCU is a cryptologist, he's a drunkard, and he is often late to things. But they need him, so he goes off to look at this thing that they pulled up from the ocean, and releases these shadow demons. Or the stuff that they're looking at, they end up releasing the shadow demons. Of course, Hawkman or Carter's there, so he turns into Hawkman, and by that I mean that somehow when he was enveloped in that fire, the nth metal of his uniform somehow got infused into his body. And so he turns into Hawkman. He transforms into Hawkman, so the nth metal comes out of his skin, I guess.
He says Shazam and turns into Hawkman.
Yeah, basically, without the magical lightning and him actually saying Hawkman or something. So his wings and his helmet and his pants and his armor and his weapons all apparently come out of his skin. And he goes off and does, the Savage Hawkman thing, which is to fight these demons, which normally I really like Hawkman, battling things, because that's what Hawkman's about to me.
Right.
I was not all that impressed with this. Even these battle scenes, this is just a mess, and it's too bad because, like I say, I really like the character of Hawkman, and this title does not do the character justice as far as I'm concerned. So like I said, I pre-ordered up through issue 4 to get the complete story, the first arc, and that's it. So Travis, did you say, why did you not?
I just didn't pick up this title because Hawkman's one of those characters that doesn't really interest me because all he does is fly around and beat stuff up.
See,
doesn't have
complete opposite.
Right. Now, and he's a character that I sometimes like in groups because he tends to be the argumentative figure, and sometimes it's fun to see him, get into fights with the other superheroes and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like his character sometimes written by certain people in certain situations, but as a whole, just reading a comic about just him didn't have any appeal to me. The title has no appeal to me. The Savage Hawkman, so it just makes him sound even that much more non-thinking of a person.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I like, as a general rule, I like my superheroes smart, and Savage Hawkman doesn't make him sound smart. So, yeah, it didn't really, it doesn't have a draw for me. There was nothing to it that, maybe, this is silly. I kind of like Hawkwoman. So, maybe if they were going to be there, that would be interesting. There are parts of, just to hear you talk about the comic, there are parts about the book that, sound somewhat interesting. But, as a whole, it just didn't have anything that really draws me. And it's not a character that, there's not a character, he's not new enough for me to go, boy, they're going to do something new with him. Like, for instance, like Mr. Terrific. I was curious to see what a solo book like him would be like, because there seems to be a lot to that character, so they could do something with him. Whereas there never has seemed to be a whole lot to Hawkman. So, yeah, there's just going to be a lot of issues of him smacking things with LeMace, right? and that doesn't, you know,
Probably,
and
yeah.
that is, I don't need that. So
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to read if you like Hawkman and you want to read a good Hawkman story, um, I recommend reading the Return of Hawkman storyline in the Justice Society, or was it the JSA? Yeah, I think it was the JSA book. Um, and then of course they had a Hawkman series that Jeff Johns also wrote for a while,
uh
and some other people got involved. But anyway, the first couple trades of that are pretty good. Like I said, if you like a Hawkman story. So yeah, it's unfortunate that what they did with Hawkman in Brightest Day, I actually ended up liking, except for the end when they basically killed off Hawkwoman.
right.
They finally addressed that whole reincarnation thing and the doomed love aspect, and it looked like that they were going to finally, be able to be together and not have to deal with all the craziness that Carter and Shiera. And then they took that away and basically got rid of Shiera. So they could have, as far as I'm concerned, they could have just started the new Hawkman series there. And because they pretty much, between what Johns did in JSA and then in the later Hawkman series and then in Brightest Day, they basically, as far as I'm concerned, they fixed everything about that was bad about the Hawkman character from over the, because Hawkman is notorious for having all these reboots of the character and just DC just messing it up more as time goes on. So Johns, I thought, did a really good job of fixing all that. So they could have done that and just kind of erased the whole JSA connection, and it would have been just fine to start off like that. But instead, Daniel is taking that new approach, and I just don't care for it. Okay, next up is Superman #1. And I know Travis doesn't like Superman in general, so
Yep.
but I did get this issue.
Not a fan.
So Superman #1, script and breakdowns by George Perez, with pencils and inks by Jesus Marino. And look again, he's back. Brian Buccellato is the color artist.
Mm.
And also George Perez and Brian Buccellato did the cover, which actually, I don't know if you saw the cover image,
Yeah.
Travis, but that's a pretty kick-ass Superman cover as far as I'm
Yeah,
concerned.
that's an iconic cover. No doubt about it.
This is where remember how way back when we first started talking about the New 52 and they had the preview images of the Justice League, and we went off on that rant about the costumes for a while.
Yep.
And I talked specifically about Superman's costume. This is one of the images that they, when they finally released them, the first issue cover images, where I went, okay, I can see this new Superman uniform working. I like it. However, I mentioned specifically Perez doing the breakdowns with Marino coming in and finishing up. It doesn't work here. Artistically, I guess, when I first saw this issue, I'm like, George Perez writing and drawing Superman's like, oh yeah, sign me up. I like Perez's work. He's not the best storyteller in the world. He's kind of wordy, but I liked his Wonder Woman run back in the 80s. I've read some other stuff recently of his where I enjoyed it, so I was looking forward to this, and I do like Superman. But I get into the issue, and where the story is actually pretty good. I really like the reintroduction of Superman here, because this is the main story of Superman, whereas in action we get, several years ago, this is the modern day version of Superman. So I was really looking forward to reading that. But the art, I don't know that it's a good pairing between the two artists. In some spots, at least. In other parts, the characters look really good. The art is more than passable. Just sometimes, I guess, mostly what I'm objecting to, now that I'm kind of flipping through the book as I'm talking here, Travis, is Superman himself. When they show Superman, it doesn't seem to work as well. And I'm not. It shouldn't be like that. The shots of Superman should be as good as the rest of the comic that were shown, and that frustrates me. But having said that, so again, like I said, I'm flipping through it. There's not a lot of panels actually showing Superman like full body shots of him doing stuff, doing Superman things. He's kind of there in the background, or it's a close-up image of him. There's not a lot of like a splash page image or a full body shot of him doing something super heroic. So that's interesting. I don't know why they chose to do that. I mean, this is Superman. It's supposed to be, when he's doing stuff, it's supposed to, a more action-oriented comic, I would think, but not this first issue. So having said that, though, the story that we get here with, and literally it starts out with the Daily Planet. You get a close-up of the Daily Planet globe, that spins up top of the Daily Planet building, that iconic image. It gets basically they're tearing down that building. I mean, so you get from page one, you get this sense of, okay, we're tearing down the old and bringing you the new. So
Right.
you get that here in the story itself. They're bringing back. Travis, do you remember reading Superman's stories from like the 70s and 80s, where Clark Kent was a broadcaster on TV? Do you remember those?
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, they're bringing that back
Oh, really?
to some degree. The Daily Planet is now joining the Galaxy Broadcast
Right.
Systems family of
I heard
media.
it was going to be a multimedia outlet. Yeah.
Yeah, and to me that totally makes sense. We've heard over the last 10 years or so how print is dead,
Right.
and how newspapers are closing across the country because not enough subscribers. People don't read newspapers anymore. They get all their information from TV or the internet. So it totally makes sense that they're modernizing this aspect of Superman's story
Hmm.
to be more multimedia friendly, to be more now, right? So part of the story here is that Lois Lane has been offered basically a leadership role in the new Galaxy Broadcast Systems TV part of it. Clark, however, is either it's not told, we're not told this, or he's not doing it. He's not part of that. He's still part of the print part of the Daily Planet,
Hmm.
and all that. So so the reason I bring that up, not just because of the new media aspect, but that was one of the things I hated about the 70s and 80s version of Superman, was that Clark Kent was a TV news reporter. Um, for some reason, I just always hated that. The fact that, here's this guy who's trying to keep one of the biggest secrets in the DC
Right.
universe.
And he's always on TV every damn day. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and they wrote him like he was the Clark Kent, the Walter Cronkite of the DC universe.
Yeah. See, that be done.
And I just never bought that. I thought that was a dumb story aspect. So I hope they don't do that. I don't mind Lois being part of that,
Hmm. Right.
but Clark, no, that makes no sense, especially with the way that Clark and Superman is portrayed. So remember when we talked about Action Comics way back when, Action Comics #1, and I talked about how I love the kind of the you get the kick-ass hold no prisoners type of attitude that
Right.
Superman has. He's there to right the wrongs, and he doesn't care about basically how everyone sees him at that point.
Uh-huh.
He's not that superhero yet.
Right.
While he apparently is a little bit more now in this story, because it's at least 5 years later.
Hmm.
The public is starting to trust him a little bit, at least. He still has that same sort of irreverent attitude about the media, and how he's seen, I guess, because it's about doing the right thing, however that looks.
Huh.
And the Clark Kent parts of the story really show that as well, or really highlight that, I should say. He doesn't like the fact that the Daily Planet's merging with Galaxy Broadcasting. He really questions Lois joining that, but he still supports her. It's just that he doesn't think it's the right idea. He's suspicious of what the new Morgan Edge character is wanting to do with all this stuff. So So I like that aspect. I really like that we have a lot of the supporting cast being highlighted in this story with Perry White and Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen. Um, Clark Kent shown quite a bit. Uh, However, the actual Superman part of the story, again, like I was saying with the art, the Superman aspect of the story, again, not very impressive. He fights this fire being who, uh, uh, if I remember correctly, um, speaks in Kryptonese.
Oh.
So I guess we find out next issue or upcoming what that's all about, but it just wasn't all that impressive. I guess I kind of got with Action Comics being kind of like the bang wow feeling I got from that. I kind of wanted that same thing here, because this is Superman. It should be like super, and it really wasn't. I mean, it was not bad for a first issue, but it still wasn't all that great from a superhero actiony aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I just want to point this out now that I'm looking at these few pages. So towards the end of the story, um, uh, you get, or when Superman's fighting this fire being, you kind of get these the boxes of what apparently is Clark Kent's story about Superman fighting this being. And I think Lee brought this up on Twitter as well, but or somebody did. But if you read what Clark Kent supposedly is writing about this,
Uh-huh.
it doesn't come across as a news story.
Yeah.
For him being a newspaper writer and apparently a really good one, this is not a good news story. It's just a narrative to get us through the story,
Right.
or at least to get us like the Metropolis citizens' view of this battle that Superman had. It just that really bugs me when, okay, if that's your job is to be a newspaper reporter and we're being shown the kind of stuff that you write, it better be it better be a news story.
Uh-huh.
And I realize that news stories don't exactly lend themselves always to a good narrative,
Right.
but either tell us that this is an editorial of some
No,
sort,
yeah.
or don't present it like a news story. So I have issues with that. And then you get to the very end, and Clark goes to Lois's apartment to talk to her, and you find out that, okay, first of all, again, we already knew this, but they're not married any longer. They don't even have a relationship anymore,
Right.
like they used to. Um, but
This marriage is bad.
But not only that, but Lois is sleeping with some guy that works at GBS,
Ah,
and so Clark gets to see that.
right.
And the last few panels is him at the elevator, and he's actually, and this I find this interesting too. He's actually listening in on their conversation about him.
Oh,
Yeah. And so he's at the elevator, and his shoulders are hunched down and his head's kind of down a little bit, so he's feeling pretty low, and he gets in the elevator and leaves. The doors close, and that's the end of the story. But so I really like the aspect of Clark and Lois's relationship as it's presented here. Uh, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff to this first issue. I mean, it's cram packed. You get a lot of story in here. Which I suppose, for our money, that's pretty good for $2.99. I didn't count the pages. I think I heard that you actually get more than 20 pages in this story, but I didn't count them, so I'm not sure. Um, but again, this is Superman. You don't need to know all the backstory, so I think this issue was structured pretty well as far as a first issue. So you get to know Clark Kent, you get to know what's going on, you get to know, so you get Superman. You don't need to know who he is. He's just Superman. He fights this thing. So that's pretty much all you need to know, I guess. So I thought it was pretty good. I'm looking forward to what comes next.
next is in next issue, or next is in after this is done?
What are you referring to the fact that Perez is not going to be on after issue 6?
Right.
I'm looking forward to reading his story. I want to know what Perez had planned for this storyline. Yeah, and of course what comes next, sure. But again, like I said before, I like Superman. I like the character. I like I just like him in general. So I enjoy Superman stories as long as they're good ones, right? Just like any
Right.
other thing.
Sure. Sure.
And Superman, there can be good Superman stories. A lot of people complain about, well, how do you write a good Superman story? What's a good Superman story? And I don't know. I've read several over the years. It just got to have the right writer and the right artist involved. So
Yeah.
I don't know that Perez doing the breakdowns and Marino doing the finishes is, like I said before, is a great combination. But I've seen worse art in other things. So. And it doesn't sound like a resounding, you should buy this issue, does it?
No.
I haven't convinced you.
No.
Well, all right. So, shall we go into the next one? The next to last issue.
Sure. Teen Titans, written by Scott Lobdell, pencils by Brett Booth, inks by Norman Rathmund, and colors by Andrew Dahlhaus.
So before we get into this, Travis, did you see I think it came out of New York City Comic Con, the DC Women Kicking Ass Tumblr, I think, commented on this. I think that's where I first saw it, but that this version of the Teen Titans is in this new DCU is the first incarnation of the Teen Titans.
Really?
This apparently, I believe, I could be wrong, but because I'm going from memory here, I believe that's what Scott Lobdell has said.
Oh, wow.
Which kind of seems contradictory.
It's interesting. So then what was backtracking back to like Redhead, for instance. So Dick and Corey and Roy, and then we're all together, they were something else?
Apparently. Or they weren't an official team or something. I don't know. But it seemed to me that it was quite apparent that the Titans had existed before, based on what we read.
Well, that would be the assumption. I mean, I never said that, but the assumption would be if those people were all together, they were the Teen Titans.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with this being the first Teen Titans. That's fine.
Why not have well, I know why they're doing it, but why not? Why not have there was once a Teen Titans and here's a new one? What does it matter?
Well, first off, why would you call yourself that if there was one before? I wouldn't name myself after a dead superhero group. I wouldn't. I'm just saying, if I was a young superhero coming up, I would not name myself after a dead superhero group. I wouldn't. I'd name myself something else. For that perspective, as far as that goes. So them starting over from scratch is fine, because then you really are there's a lot of dead weight and stuff around the Teen Titans. So why not start all over again? Granted, all the rest of those groups have some too, but I don't know. The last couple years of the Teen Titans, the book and whatnot, has been so rough that starting completely over wouldn't be a bad thing.
Okay, granted.
So I don't have a problem with that. It doesn't bother me one way or the other. It's the first. That means they can't immediately move into a giant tower that's shaped like a T and all that kind of stuff, which is fine by me.
Okay.
I guess this way we're obviously going to get to see a team built, as opposed to, hey, we've got this place, it's always been there. Why don't you come over for a sleepover and hang out, and we'll fight some criminals while we're here. Sure, okay, yeah, because that's what the comic has been for a very long time.
Okay, sure.
I don't know how much of the last Teen Titans you've read. I know you read right up there towards the end, but there was some, before you jumped on board, there was some stinky stuff, and that's how a lot of it was. A lot of the times, hey, we're recruiting, why don't you come over? Yeah, I got this place. Oh, everybody knows the Teen Titans Tower, blah, blah, blah. I just, So, like I said, starting over may not be a bad thing.
Okay.
This comic in particular, it was okay. There are parts I find interesting. There are parts I find annoying. Some of the stuff that I find annoying are the same stuff I've found annoying most of the time with the Teen Titans, and some of that has to do with my not being a fan of certain characters and their obsession with continuing to bring those characters back. I guess I'm not a big Tim Drake fan. I
Mm-hmm.
know that just going to make everybody all upset and whatnot. Um, and because I'm not a really big Tim Drake fan, I mean, I just don't care. And if you put too much Tim Drake in front of me, then I do care because he annoys me because there's too much Tim Drake. This issue felt very Tim Drake centric because it's kind of told mostly through his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So that part I'm not real, yeah, there's just too much Tim Drake.
So I would disagree with you right there. But go
Okay,
on.
that's fine. That's fine. You can disagree with me. I've already been told 2 or 3 times on Twitter now to shut the hell up about the fact it's too much Tim Drake. So there you go.
No, I haven't
And
said that. Have other people been
no,
telling you to shut up about it?
no, you haven't. You haven't.
Okay.
I like the beginning part with Kid Flash. I like him screwing up.
Sure.
Because if we're starting new, these people need to be new. The original idea behind the original Teen Titans, granted, was that they were sidekicks, but it was a place for them to go and to learn how to be heroes without being judged by their adult counterpart, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, isn't that kind of the idea behind the original Teen Titans? So it looks like we're going to kind of go back to that to some degree,
Yeah.
which I'm okay with. So I'm okay with him screwing this thing up. I mean, how the heck can these guys know all this stuff, but they know and whatnot? So that may mean that this is a different character, obviously, because wasn't the original Kid Flash? I mean, isn't he looking like the future, like super smart?
Well, the Bart Allen version of Kid Flash, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously that's different. I think this scene is interesting where Tim Drake is looking at his nice big fancy computer with all the spreadsheets of all these teen heroes. Getting towards the middle of the comic where he's looking at, it's right after the whole Kid Flash scene.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got pictures obviously of Kid Flash. I'm assuming that is Static Shock there in the middle. And then you've got, looking at some of the smaller panels, it's interesting to show the other people that they're showing here. I mean, there's a couple green animals, so I'm assuming that means that Beast Boy is around.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I would assume that's Starfire in the background in one picture because she's got big orange hair. You've got Miss Martian down in one corner. I didn't think that Miss Martian was going to be part of the Teen Titans, right? No, she's on the cover anyway. But, so they obviously are showing her again. It looks like Raven up in the top far corner.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that these characters may not be in this book, but they're still showing us they exist. Because, there's a lot of these characters, do they still exist? And I think it's interesting if they're answering some of that for us, I think. So I thought that was an interesting panel. Showing that.
Oh, yeah.
Just because it shows all those little bits and pieces of, other people that are out there. They may not be in part of this comic, but now we know they exist.
Yeah.
I guess the premise of the fact that there's somebody out there scooping up all these metahuman kids, that's potentially interesting. I like the new look of Wonder Girl, even though you're not supposed to call her Wonder Girl.
Well, do you remember when they first solicited this issue? It made it sound like that Wonder Girl was like the antagonist of the story.
Right, she's gonna be some big old hothead.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I did not. I mean, yeah, she's a troublemaker and whatnot, but she's definitely not the quote unquote bad guy of this issue.
Right.
So
Right.
I don't understand that solicitation now.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't either. And I like I said, I like the new costume. I like the way she looks.
Although I'm sorry, I just looked up. I just looked it up here. So it says the mysterious and belligerent powerhouse thief known as Wonder Girl. So I guess I took that to mean more than what they actually meant by it. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out. Yeah, I like her too.
I like the look of it and whatnot. I think her costume change is fine.
Yeah, and it's like a melding of
Donna Troy and
Donna Troy's old costume and
some Wonder Woman aspects.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah. But we don't really get introduced to a whole lot of Teen Titans in this, so it's going to take a while, obviously, to gather up a quote unquote team.
Mm-hmm.
I like the way Superboy looks at the very end of this.
Oh yeah.
Looks pretty cool there.
It almost makes me intrigued to actually get more issues of Superboy,
Yeah.
but not enough to
Right.
actually
Right.
follow through
Right.
with that.
Um, Everybody else in my household that read this, my 10-year-old didn't read it, but everybody else in the household read it. They liked it. I was like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not real excited. I'm not real excited about it. I am both a Brett Booth fan and not a Brett Booth fan. Some
Yeah.
things I like, some aspects of it I really like, some aspects I hate.
Hmm.
Like I said, for me, it was too Tim Drake centric. I could listen to him not talk a whole lot.
Uh, so I didn't mind the portrayal of Tim Drake here at all. He comes across as very knowledgeable and
An obnoxious
confident.
know-it-all. Okay.
I don't think he's obnoxious at all.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Oh, okay. I guess. I guess.
Because he's like pointing at her, going, "Hey!" After he's kicked the guy in the head, he's pointing at her, going, "Hey, you're that Cassie, blah blah blah, and blah 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 blah, and these people are after you, and you've got these powers, and you're da da da." Like, okay, whatever. I don't know.
I will admit.
If I was her, I'd be thinking, "Oh my God, this is a stalker wearing a superhero costume, and I should be punching him in the face the next chance."
But I like that. I like that portrayal. I thought that was an interesting character moment between those
Yeah.
two. But I can kind of see where you say he's obnoxious. When the mysterious guy from nowhere. Ugh,
Yeah.
I really don't like these shady
It's a
cabal.
great acronym.
Anyway,
Clandestine. Yeah.
but he kind of comes across as a little bratty in that little scene between him and the guy and the one girl that came to collect. Oh, not the girl, the group.
It comes
The
to try and
masked group comes to collect him. Yeah.
right.
And I also like this is just a small little thing. When I first got to the scene where we see Tim Drake, um, oh yeah, it says New York City, one of two penthouses at Lex Towers. I'm like, what the hell? Why is
Yeah.
Tim Drake at Lex Towers? Well, then he
Yeah.
blows it up. So I thought that was kind of funny. And also, he's looking when we first get introduced to him as well. He's okay. I thought this is kind of weird. So he's obviously been there for a little while because he's got this base of operations and he's all these notes on the wall and all this stuff.
Uh-huh.
And he has a picture of him and Batman him as Robin with Batman.
Yeah. How do you get that picture?
Yeah. I mean, did Alfred go out there and snap it as they were jumping off the building or something?
That would be awesome.
I mean, it's a great idea that, the fact that he has this picture and the picture tells the audience, tells us,
Right.
he was Robin, he was with Batman, there's this relationship, but
Yep.
yeah, it totally doesn't make sense. And if you look, okay, now I'm going to complain about the art. If you look at the panel previous to that, where you see the picture in miniature, it's not the same picture. It sort of is, but the Robin character in the small first picture is down lower than the Robin we see in the
Oh
close-up.
Lord, that's perspective. How do you know?
No. There's no perspective here. That is just the artist being lazy.
Okay.
So yeah, I like that. When I first saw the cover image to this, and you see Red Robin, and by the way, talk about a name. I hate that name.
Yeah, same here.
They're taking it from. See, this is the thing. So this is supposed to be the new 52, the new DC universe. Yes, Tim Drake was Red Robin for a few years, coming out of the Batman storyline, where Bruce disappeared, and Tim didn't want to. He knew he was going to have to do some questionable things, and he didn't want to sully the name of Batman and Robin, I guess. I always thought that was kind of weak. But they took the Red Robin name from the Kingdom Come series. Because that's the character that Dick becomes in the future in that Kingdom Come series. He became Red Robin. So they're capitalizing on that. But I just think that's dumb. The fact that he calls himself Red Robin, which is sort of redundant, and not all that different. So how are you protecting any kind of legacy by calling yourself that? Anyway, I just have a real big pet peeve about that. But anyway, so I see the image with him with these wing instead of a cape, it's this actual wings.
Right.
And I didn't like it at first, but the more more I saw it and more I thought about it, like, well, yeah, that makes kind of sense. He's supposed to be a bird. He should be able to fly somewhat.
Right.
And they show him with these rockets. I would think, though, from a practical standpoint, that those wings would be a little, not very conducive to fighting bad guys. I don't know,
Right.
but it looks cool. And yeah, I like you. I like the Wonder Girl character. I did like the interaction between the two of them, and like you said something about, or did you say this about Tim coming across as kind of stalkery
Oh yeah.
with her?
Oh yeah, definitely. And she's trying to be all in. I mean, I think it's amusing. She's trying to, being a thiefy kind of person, she's trying to be all innocent, like I have no idea what you're talking about, and
Hmm.
and trying to act all innocent
Hmm.
and sheepish about the whole thing and whatnot. And I didn't mind that part. I just think he's obnoxious.
Maybe okay, I'll grant you maybe a little bit. I can see him, coming across as obnoxious, but I like him. I like the character. I'm glad he's part of this. Uh, Another thing, you said something about Brett Booth's art. You like it, and you also don't like it. I have the same reaction. Not just because he shows things wrong between one panel and the next, but I kind of have a problem with, and this might be partly the writer's fault as well. But there's that scene where Wonder Girl's in the water, and she's coming out of the water, and Tim reaches down to give her a hand, and she's like, "Move your hand or lose it," right?
Yeah.
And her face, clearly she's annoyed. She's angry.
Mm-hmm.
And in the next panel, and she's sitting there looking sad and dejected and whatnot. And I guess seeing those two extremes of emotions between one panel and the next without having any kind of exposition between the two
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's just artists doing the shortcut thing, or writers doing the shortcut thing to get the characters from one beat to the next.
No.
And I find that grating because it doesn't flow as well. I thought this was a pretty good, my reservations about the previous incarnation of Titans and whatnot. I think this is a pretty good first issue for new readers. You don't have to really know anything other than the fact that this character, the Tim Drake character, was once Robin, and you're shown that.
Right.
You don't really have to. Oh, we see Kid Flash, of course, at the beginning, but he's the kid version of Flash. You don't really need to know anything else. We get a lot of information about Wonder Girl from Tim Drake, so you get a lot of that, and then of course Superboy. You just know he's just a Superboy. You don't have to know much more beyond that unless you want to go read the Superboy series. So I thought it was pretty good first issue of Teen Titans. This actually was not one of the titles that I was going to get. But I decided to, the more I read about what was coming, I decided to pre-order it, and then I read this issue, and I'm like, yeah, I'll stick around for a little bit. But I wanted to ask you, Travis, so on the cover we get Superboy, Red Robin, Kid Flash, and Wonder Girl, but then there are 3 other characters here that were shown, and none of them look familiar to me. No. So these must be new characters. We do see like the guy in the middle with the big hands. He does appear in that 2-page spread that you mentioned.
Right. His name is like Block or something like that, I want to think.
Oh, really?
They've talked about him since then. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just from interviews and stuff.
Right. Culling the internet, they've talked about him. He's obviously not in this, but maybe that's not the character. Maybe it's somebody else. I know they're going to introduce a gay character into the book at some point. So, but yeah, no, I don't know who any of these people are on the front. So, the funky insecty looking, I don't know what lady that's in the background back there, and the smiley face girl in black is obviously not Raven, but I have no idea who she is.
Yeah. I don't know what the guy with the big hands and the spider girl, those images just don't entice me at all. But I don't know who they are either. But yeah.
Well, if the book holds tradition for anything, those characters won't matter anyway. the comic's going to all be about Tim Drake and Connor and Cassandra and
Bart.
Bart or
Yeah.
whoever it is. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's what the book's going to be about.
That's true.
And I'll probably end up dropping it.
Well, we'll see if I do too. Okay, anything else about Teen Titans?
Nope.
Let's move on to our final book of the week 4, the New 52. And boy, did this cause a bit of a stir on the internet as well. Voodoo #1. Okay, Voodoo #1 story by Ron Mars, art and cover by Sami Basri, colors by Jessica Collin. Travis, what did you think of Voodoo?
Oh no, you first.
Oh, this will be good. Okay, so when I first saw the solicitation for this book, I had no idea that this was a previous creation. This was out of the Wildstorm universe. So I had no idea. All I knew is that Ron Mars was involved, and I saw the cover image. I'm like, well, that sort of looks interesting to me. The art looks pretty good. I don't know what Voodoo is all about. I don't remember exactly what Ron Mars said about the book, but what he said intrigued me enough to give it a try. And so then, the issue came out, and this is before I read it, but the issue came out, and then, along the lines of, what happened with Catwoman and Red Hood and the Outlaws, this was kind of like part 3 of that whole, sexuality in comics and the portrayal of women in comics. Those arguments and all that stuff was coming up, and so this was kind of like the third part of that. So having said that, you open up the comic, and the first page is, here's a stripper, on all fours, looking right at you. So that there you go. That tells you right away what this comic is about, at least in this story, this first issue. Those valid and contentious arguments aside about sexuality and the portrayal of women, the one thing that struck me about this story, or about this comic, was the art. Say what you will about what actually is being shown and whatnot, this art is really good.
Yeah.
I really like Sami Basri's art. I don't know. I assume it's a she by the way it's spelled. By the way Sami is spelled. But this artist can do more books, as far as I'm concerned, if this one tanks, which I think it will, given the backlash that it's received. But I love the art. The art was great. Now the story. And I'm not saying the art is great just because she draws female characters, at least the strippers, not just strippers, but she draws the strippers very well. It's not about that. I just think it's really good, clean comic art, and she definitely knows anatomy, that's for sure. But I mean, there are scenes in here that are not part of the strip joint. And those are done, I think, very well. The characters all have distinct looks. I like the female agent that we get in this. She's shown as competent, if not hesitant. She seems to defer to her male partner too much in this, which I know fuels the fire about the portrayal of women in this. But she's shown as kick-ass. You would expect someone who is an agent of some sort. Travis, do you remember? Is the agency defined in this, or
No.
Who the agency that they're working for is?
No, it's not.
Okay, but so anyway, there's that. You would think that someone who's some sort of, I took it at first as a government agency, would be trained, to handle situations. So I like that, but mostly this is just. So we have this character called Voodoo. She's called Voodoo at this. Did they actually call it the Voodoo Lounge or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
And so whoever is, yeah, they do. There's some um, there's a piece of art in here that actually
Voodoo
shows it.
because the top talent of the Voodoo Lounge is called Voodoo.
Yeah, thank you. That's
Whoever that is, whoever the top girl is, she
right.
gets called.
So that kind of thing. I always hate when writers do that. I see this in TV and movies a lot too, where they take this piece of information and apply it to a greater um, application of the story, and it doesn't seem to work. Why would she continue to? Why would she refer to herself as Voodoo, or why is this title called Voodoo based on such a flimsy piece of information in this comic? I just think that's silly. But anyway, but really, what we're shown is these agents tracking and watching the character now called Voodoo, and then we get this long 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 pages of the scene between Voodoo and the male agent, where she's mostly doing the lap dance. And that's pretty much the bulk of the story right there. Where he knows something about her and she's trying to find out what he knows, and then she kills him. Turns into this lizard-like creature and kills him. And then assumes the identity of takes his identity as she walks out of the stripper joint and is going to go meet up with the female agent. So that's the story. There's not much to it. The one thing I found interesting about this is that, again, we get this whole anti-alien bit that we've seen in other of the 52 comics.
Mm-hmm.
And the Voodoo character is trying to find out what people know about her to protect herself, I guess. I don't quite understand why she freaks out and kills the guy. She could have just as easily handled it a different way so as not to expose her identity.
She's already been exposed. He pretty much tells her exactly what it is, and
sure.
But she seems relatively disturbed with the idea of being taken and put on a table and chopped up.
Okay, but why kill him? What does that really gain her, other than
he's not chasing her anymore, is he?
Well, okay, true. She also takes his identity.
And she takes his identity.
But what we are not shown, and this is what bugs me about this, is that she tears him apart. He's clearly dead in that chair. Now, first of all, she's yelling, he's screaming, and we get the panel where he's laying there dead. There's blood all over the walls, and right. we see her walking out in her human form. Mm-hmm. The reflection on the glasses there. And then the next panel is she's walking out clothed, saying, "I quit." So I know.
Yeah.
I know strip places like this, they usually play loud music and whatnot. But I also know that they usually don't go they're not that private, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I have a problem with a story where she does this thing and no one seems to know about it. And I realize it's a quick yeah. There's a quick cut here. But we are not shown that she does anything with the body. So she takes on his form, but that's a perhaps fleeting move on her part, because they're going to find this guy dead there.
Maybe.
Unless we get something next issue where she somehow takes care of it, we're just not shown that here, and I have a problem with that from a storytelling standpoint.
Okay.
So yeah, that's basically the story. I like I said, when I was listening to Ron or reading what Ron Mars was saying about this book, I was intrigued by it, but then I get this story and I just don't. Other than the art, there's really nothing here that intrigues me about this character.
I didn't mind this book, and it to some degree it baffles me why some people have. I mean, I understand why some people have issues with it to some degree, but at the same time, I don't get it. And of course, I know this will get me in all kinds of trouble. But I'm really confused. Okay, so it's set in a stripper club. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's where the first issue is set at. And okay, we have friends that are like saying this is like the worst comic book they've read. It's just all TNA, and it baffles me because there's obviously more story than that it's just TNA.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a certain. Well, first there's a certain amount of TNA in it for sure because there's TNA in all forms of media and entertainment right now,
Mm-hmm.
as a general rule. That's just to me to some degree that's a given. And it's set in a strip club, so if it didn't have a certain amount of TNA, it wouldn't make any sense at all, in my opinion. It would be kind of dumb. Okay. The title is obviously not written for everybody. You know, I don't have a problem with the whole strip joint thing because I don't have a problem with strip joints, I guess. The character's there for a reason. It tells us why she's there. It's not like she's just there because, ooh, it would be really titillating to put her in a strip club. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's a certain amount of it that's titillating to put her in a strip club. But they give a reason why she's there, you know, because it's set next to this army base and you know, I don't know. I think they do a decent job of introducing characters in this. You know, I think there is a story there. I even think the part where she's backstage with all the other she's backstage with all the other strippers. They're talking about their lives and whatnot, where you're given a little more introduction to the main character. You know, she obviously doesn't know everything and she's still learning stuff and she's not comfortable with certain things and whatnot. And that's the way of, in my opinion, of naturally giving us those things about the character. You know, it's set within the confines of, where they chose to set this comic book in the first place. Granted, I guess they could have set this someplace else completely different. And maybe that would have been less controversial and whatnot. But I don't think there's anything wrong with where they're setting that. I don't think that any of this. I don't think it took away from anybody. The whole layup dance scene and whatnot. You're being told the rest of the premise to this story about what's going on, about the fact there are people who are chasing her, and her way of dealing with it. Yeah, granted, they don't show what the heck she does with the body. You're right. She turns into this big old monster, basically guts the guy, and leaves him for all purposes. But we don't know that in the next issue that isn't going to all come back and get her.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to go off and try and fake being this guy, which I think is really interesting. And she's now taking on this other agent. I don't know. I didn't mind this comic. I actually thought it was kind of interesting. And like I said, we have some mutual friends who are just like, I posted about the fact that I didn't think this was that bad of a comic, and he commented in my blog that it was just the worst thing ever. And I don't understand it. I don't understand what's so bad about this comic. And compared to some other bad comics that we have read, what's so bad about this comic in comparison to Red Hood? I didn't think this one was. Yes, it's got strippers in it, but I didn't think it was treated juvenilely. And the Red Hood is almost all that. It's a bunch of juvenile, look how I got a pair of 38s and all the other bullshit lines that were in that. In comparison to this, so it baffles me. Is this a stellar comic? No, I think it's a gorgeous comic. The cover. Look, even if I wouldn't have never read the solicitations, just looking at the cover of this, I would have said, "Hell yeah, I'm buying that." That's an attractive cover. Granted, I'm a guy and I like girls, and so maybe that's part of it too. And I understand if you've got an issue of strip clubs and you think the second you put anybody in a strip club, it's demeaning. Okay, I can see why you do not like this book. Completely understand that.
Sure.
If you don't have an issue with strip clubs, though, I don't see how this is a horrid TNA fest, and that's all it is. That it doesn't have anything else in it worthwhile. I don't know. I'm getting the next issue. It's on my pull list, and I'd be getting the next issue even if it wasn't on my pull list because I'm curious to see what happens next.
Yeah.
I just can't see you can judge an entire comic book because in one issue there was a strip club in it, and it spent the entire time in the strip club. But it wasn't like that's all it was.
Yeah.
So
Well, but it pretty much that was all it was.
That was the setting.
Yes.
That was the
yes.
setting.
You're
Well,
right.
I've got an issue with gross back alleys that are full of rotten garbage and beer cans and stuff like that. But a lot of my comics are set in it, and I don't lose sleep over it. I don't see that's just it. Yeah, I don't know. To me, if your beef with it is that it's set in a that it's set in a strip club, then obviously you aren't going to like the book.
Yeah. But you understand the argument that some people are making about this, right?
Yeah, I do. Like I said, if you have an issue with strip clubs and you think a strip club is demeaning and stuff, then yeah, you're right. I think there's more controversy over the Catwoman title personally than there is this one.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that.
This one's pretty lightweight. I in comparison to the Catwoman book.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it's one issue. I guess if she's pursues being a stripper everywhere she goes, and they perpetually show her, hanging out in a panty and bra or less, then obviously the book is going for one thing. But I don't think that's what's going to happen with the book.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It seems to me that they use the setting and the TNA shots to really make a splash, so to speak, with a certain audience. Of course, that alienated, I think, another segment of the audience.
Sure.
But then again, I don't think DC is necessarily all that interested in appealing to everyone with everything.
No, they can't.
And they shouldn't. They shouldn't.
Right.
But the question is, should they really appeal to that segment of the audience? I guess in this way, and so perhaps provocatively.
So you think this was a bad book?
I actually think it was a better story overall, and I'm talking about the writing and the art put together,
right,
than say Red Hood. Definitely. It's better than some of the other issues we've read.
Okay, I'm just curious if I'm like living in my own little.
Like I said,
I read this and she didn't have an issue with it.
Yeah.
Because she didn't think that the main character was treated dumbly. I mean, she was doing her job. Okay, granted, maybe they could have showed more panels that were her stripping.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think the stripping at the beginning of it sets up the character that gets gutted, and it also sets up the character that the female agent that leaves. I think that they used it to explain the characters to us.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just there strictly for the TNA.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I can understand it if that's all it was. But I don't know. Yeah, like I said, I'm confused by the book. I understand the uproar around part of it, but to say that it's a horrible book because it has strippers in it,
just based on that,
yeah, it confuses me. So, yeah, whatever. I will choose to be one of those pig-headed males and think it's an okay, fine book and be picking up the next issue of it.
Well, I'm pre-ordered through issue 3, just like I said, based on what I heard from Ron Mars about it. But I probably won't be continuing with it just based on what I'm seeing here. Although, I'd be very tempted with the art, because the art's just lovely. And I usually don't buy books just based on art, so that would be unusual for me to do that. But I could be convinced to continue with it if the art continues to be as good as this. I just hope that the story and the character moves beyond this obvious.
Yeah. Well, I consider right now I'm looking at the solicitations for number 2, and I can see why this is going to drive a lot of people away if they haven't already been driven away, quite frankly. I mean, the last sentence of the solicitations for number 2 is DC's sexy, edgy new series goes into overdrive with one of the most unexpected opening scenes ever. So
Yeah.
they're going for the provocative. I mean, they're going for the provocative, ooh la la
Hmm.
aspect.
And so, okay, so that right there tells me that, that I guess I don't
But they're
like
trying to sell it. But is that, yeah.
I don't like being, I don't know. I
Issue
don't,
three's got Kyle Rayner in it.
oh wow. Uh, just if that's really what they're going for, I guess even despite the fact that, like I said, the art's good and some of the aspects of the story I'm intrigued by, I wouldn't want to continue with it because I don't particularly
Right.
care for it. It's just like it's sort of the same reason why I don't like slasher films. I don't watch slasher films because I just don't care for that kind of story. I don't want
Right.
to see uh, people getting chopped up and sliced up and dying horrible deaths. I don't want to see a bunch of TNA in every comic,
Hmm.
or every issue. I realize that there's a market for that and people will buy that. But if that's really what they're going for, if despite the fact that there is some story in it, and like I said, the art's really good, I won't stay long with it because I'm just not interested in reading about that kind of stuff.
But that's the only one of the five that are here. That's the only one that's solicited that way. Is
Sure.
number two. The rest of them aren't solicited that way. The rest of them, she's on the run, she's fighting, she uses her shapeshifting abilities to deal with her threats that are around her.
Mhm.
So,
Well, okay, so that's good. If in fact they're getting away from that. Oh, and I see. Ooh, I like that. I just noticed the for issue number 4, John Tyler Christopher did the cover, and I love his work. So, anyway, I just want to mention that.
yeah.
Oh, he does number 5 as well. Hmm. I would almost buy these comics even if I wasn't just for his covers because I love his work. Yeah, I have to admit I'm intrigued by what could this title could be.
Right.
I'm just concerned that it's not going to be just much more than what we've already seen.
Well, I'm on board because I can't believe that every issue is going to be like issue one is. And it's certainly not set in a strip club during the entire time.
Hmm.
So, like I said, if the issue is that she starts out as a stripper and it's in a strip club, it's one issue. It's
Hmm.
one issue of that. If that's what it continues to be, then yeah, I mean, then I can see if well, I don't want to read a book that's so much a shallow fluff either. I mean, the art's pretty, but I can find that on the internet. You know, I don't need to pay for that. So well, it's the truth. It's the truth. So if they can't make if the story isn't interesting, then I'm not going to be interested in it. But I think there's enough there that's going to be interesting. Because it's the whole alien aspect and how that plays into the new DC universe.
Hmm.
And she looks like she's going to be running across the country, because she's going to be in Metropolis and she's going to be in other places, and how she's going to deal with that.
Hmm.
Because she's obviously she's not a hero in the traditional sense of a superhero book.
Right.
So this is a little different. So I'm on board because of that. So I'm going to see where it's going to go for a while.
Yeah.
I just, like I said, I understand some of the issues with issue one, but I'm also baffled with it's the worst story I've ever read. That's the part that baffles me. I don't, yeah. Anyway, I'm still mystified, and I could go on talking about how mystified I am, but
Okay. Well, that's it. We've gone through all of the 52 issues, at least the ones we've read.
yep.
I guess we have talked about the ones we haven't read, but
Sure.
we've talked about all the new 52. Travis, I think like I said last time, we'll get together maybe after you and I have read all of the number 2 issues and just kind of talk about the whole new 52 in general and how we're feeling about it.
Cool. Sounds good.
Down the road. All right. Is there anything else that you want to say about the 52?
I think as a whole, it's been a success. I think, regardless of their sales one. For me, I'm missing some titles. There are some titles that got canned because the new 52 are coming out, and I miss them dearly
Mm-hmm.
still. But there are some new comics that are out that we wouldn't have had without the launch that I'm really happy with and really excited about. So
Mhm.
I don't. Was it a good trade? I don't know about that, but I still miss my Secret Six, but
Yeah,
um,
and Batgirl.
and Batgirl, but only those two. The rest of them, there's a new version of what I was reading before out, and there's other new stuff that we
Hmm.
just we absolutely would not have had if there wouldn't have been this relaunch. And so, I'm all for the relaunch now.
Yeah, yeah. When I first heard about it, I was really excited for it, and I started reading some issues, and there were some that obviously I liked. Others I didn't particularly care for all that much. Some were just kind of on the fence either way. But then the more I read, I was starting to get a little discouraged because I didn't think that the first issues of many of these comics lived up to the potential or lived up to the desire of DC Comics to lure readers in and make
Right.
them, convert them to DC comic readers. So I was a little dismayed about that. But overall, I've been entertained, and I'm buying more DC books now and not just because I pre-ordered, but because I want to read these stories. So I'm
Hmm.
buying more DC Comics now than I used to. So, from a sales standpoint, that's a success to some degree. So they did a good job there. Um, I'm just mostly curious. Now I'm really curious about the kind of like the overall story. Like I mentioned before, that whole anti-alien thing that's going on
Uh-huh.
here.
Uh-huh.
I want to know more about that and why that. What did Superman's appearance? How did that cause what we're kind of getting snippets of from here and there? How did that come
Right.
about? I want to know
Right.
more about that. I mostly want to know how the larger DC universe sees these characters in the Justice League and these other the non-Justice League characters and how everybody reacts to that because it's a very different vibe
Yeah.
in this new DC universe as far as what the costume superheroes how they're
We're,
how they're how
right.
they're looked at and how they're
Where they're
portrayed.
places. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's just it's a very strange place for me as a longtime DC reader and fan to be.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure of the place that or no, I'm not sure how I feel about that just yet. I'm a little concerned, but I'm also excited for the possibility. So,
Mm.
okay, I think that's it, Travis.
Yep.
Like I said, we'll get together soon. I want us to not talk about DC Comics exclusively in future episodes.
Yes.
So we'll have to do those as well.
Yeah.
So we'll do that. I think probably the next episode will hopefully will be a non-DC episode.
Cool.
Uh, but anyway, we'll talk comics either way.
That's right.
All right. Don't forget, everyone who's still listening, this will probably be a really long episode once I get it all edited together. Which what you hopefully won't know is that Travis and I had some connection issues. So I don't know exactly how long this is going to end up being, but I imagine it's going to be pretty long, like the other 52 episodes have been.
Yeah.
But if you're still listening, thank you very much, and please don't forget to get a hold of us, give us some feedback. Please go on to iTunes if you use that to rate us and give us some feedback there. Also on Podcast Alley, Longbox Review is there. You can rate us and give us some feedback there as well. I'll also go to our blogs, longboxreview.wordpress.com and oddfellowsthoughts.wordpress.com. That's it. Thanks, Travis.
Yeah. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening.